Good morning. Hopefully we're acting right here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers.
50-50.
Yeah, that's so. Which 50 are you? Which 50 am I? Are you acting right? We'll have to.
We'll let everybody else out there decide.
We'll have to figure that out. I'm Ravi, Lulla. That's Andrew Rogers.
So we better act right.
We are live on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, as well as ESPN Tri-Cities in Central Nebraska. Shout out to all our Central Nebraska peeps out there. We've got a Twitter, YouTube, all the things, all of the internet things that you can think of that are, age appropriate. You can find us there.
That are in a reasonable realm.
Yeah. What's the SFW, safe for work places on the internet. That's where you can find us. If you wonder what Andrew and I do before we're on the air. So yesterday we were trying to recall from memory pretty well, I might add, the 2011 Texas Rangers for obvious reasons. It's the last Rangers.
I had an advantage.
Yeah,
because the Cardinals played against them. So I knew 5 off the rip.
Yep. And then so we were, Rangers made their first World Series since 2011. So obviously we have to, just try and remember, just name random baseball players from that Texas Rangers team. This morning, Andrew, we're sitting down and he goes, you know how bad that 2013 NFL draft was? And so he starts reading names, and for some reason I was like, it'd be fun for me to just see if I can
start rattling off the colleges.
Yeah, positions in colleges from where all these guys were from, and I was killing it, by the way.
That I can attest.
So that's what the off hours of the show looks like. We're like those two old guys that just sit around naming 90s baseball players, and we go, oh yeah, he was good. That's basically what happens in the breaks, which personally I love. That's just sitting around naming old sports things is one of my favorite pastimes.
Sometime or someday at least, we're gonna have to come in and do the Immaculate Grid, because you've been talking about it for a while now, and that would fit right into what we do in the morning.
It does. Yeah, they're tricky though. They're pretty. Some of them are pretty tough.
They're time consuming for sure, but if we gave ourselves 10 minutes or something like that, we could probably get it done.
The other thing we could do is one of us could do it before the show to get a score and give ourselves a time limit, and then the other person can do it live and try and figure out if they can beat the score. Maybe we have a new game for Friday.
Okay.
Maybe we have a new game for Friday.
Let's type this down because we will forget about it.
We will 100% forget about it. We're a little bit like goldfish there. Coming up on the show today, we've got a great program lined up for you. We've got our guy, Brian Christopherson, at 8 a.m. from Husker.
Oh, my gosh, yes. Yes.
Husker 24/7. That was a weird clip. I don't know if I like that, Shane. We've got Kendeigh from KETV at 8:30. New guest this morning at 8:45, Andy Classen from the WTL podcast. It's a betting podcast. We'll talk about some Nebraska and Big Ten betting with Andy there. And then the entire 9 o'clock hour, special treat for you today. The entire 9 o'clock hour, our very own Avarie Howard will be in studio.
Avarie
talking sports mostly, but also we're going to play the Guess Who game, which I am excited about.
So let me explain to you what I was trying to explain over text.
You texted this to me, and I was like, I'm sure it's not as complicated as it sounds, but when you said that, my mind felt like the first time I watched Interstellar, and I was like, what's happening?
So you came in with a celebrity or an athlete or somebody today, right?
Yeah.
So you have somebody on the brain. You don't share that, okay?
I'm not going to tell you.
So Shane, Avarie, and I will try to guess your person.
Okay.
But we have to alternate asking questions.
Okay.
So if I go first, I would say, is it a male? You don't say yes or no. Like at the time, you'll say yes or no. If you say yes, then I have to guess a random athlete or celebrity that's a male.
Okay.
Okay. And I would say
Taylor.
Keep going, Shane. That's not on my brain.
Levante?
No.
Kenny.
Yes, Kenny Pickett. That's who it was. And you would say no, unless it was Kenny Pickett out of the crazy circumstance.
Yeah.
And you'd say, oh my gosh,
You're
what just happened? So then Shane would go.
Yeah.
So he knows he's a male.
Yep.
So Shane's not asking that question too. Shane's now going to ask, is he an athlete? You'd say no.
So it's a group effort here.
Right.
Okay.
But you have to remember everybody's But whoever gets it right gets a point, or we're going to play for people that call in because we have UNO hockey tickets to give away today against Ohio State on Friday.
That's a big matchup.
So when are we playing the game, just so we can let people know?
9:30.
9:30 is the game. So if you want to play, you'll call in. You'll attach yourself to a personality on the show, whether that's Avarie, Ravi, myself, or Shane. Whoever's giving the clue, you can't obviously be with.
Yeah.
But if that say Ravi wins for my prompt, then you win out there.
So you're betting on one of us.
Correct.
Okay.
So it sounded a lot more complicated over text.
If Shane's world's any indication, I don't know if anybody will be betting on Shane, but
don't blame Shane.
It's also, it might it's not naming Adam Sandler movie, so he might be okay.
That is true.
Oh, come on, Shane.
Unless the prompt is Adam Sandler. And if that's the case, then Shane is screwed.
That would be mean.
Well, maybe.
Maybe. So that's what's coming up on the show today. Good stuff for you. A lot going on. The Diamondbacks punched their ticket to the World Series.
Yeah, that was a great game. I thought for sure that Game 7 had Phillies written all over it.
I did too. I really did.
Coming in, you have Ranger, who was unbelievable. And that's not to say that Fat wasn't either. But Ranger is like a postseason pro. Last year, he was fantastic in the postseason. This year, he was unbelievable in the postseason. I just thought that the Diamondbacks would have a really hard time in front of that crowd, too, in Philly to put together hits, to rally in an inning, to get guys on base. And it showed to be a non-issue for them. They took the crowd out of it right away. I remember it was either the third inning or the fourth. I think it was the third, because I was completely shocked when I saw it that the Diamondbacks had 7 hits already.
Yeah.
In like the third inning. That to me was like, the instant, maybe I should second guess my pick coming into tonight. Even though I think the Phillies were up 2-1 at that point.
Yeah.
Seeing how well they were seeing pitches against Ranger Suarez, I thought to myself that this could get dangerous. This could get nuts. And then the Phillies, I think, were feeling a little bit of the same, because they had guys warming up in the third or second and then sat them down. Same guy warming up in the third. Let's replace Ranger. Oh, now we're going to actually have Zach Wheeler come into the game at some point, because we got a guarantee that we're going to put zeros on the scoreboard. It was almost as if the Phillies didn't trust their bullpen as much as the Diamondbacks did, because when they pulled Fat, it was all relief pitching. Relief pitching this, relief pitching that. And Paul Sewald is, talk about one of the best closers in the game and coming out of nowhere. Yeah. Pitching for the Mariners earlier this year, getting traded. Now he is the closer on a World Series team. He was projected to be behind Munoz in Seattle this year.
Right.
And now he's the main guy, the focal point of your bullpen.
Doesn't it always kind of seems like the best closers kind of come out of nowhere? Like, it seems like one of the harder things to predict. Every once in a while,
unless you're one of the top 3.
Yeah. It seems, and even a lot of those guys that end up being in those top spots, they kind of have strange career paths a lot of times. Like, I think, I know he's not one of the top guys anymore, but like Kenley Jansen was a catcher for coming up. True. And then they're like, oh, maybe you should pitch. You have guys that are kind of like washed out starters. This is going back a little ways, but like Eric Gagne, terrible starter, becomes like the most dominant closer of that era in like late 2000s era of Major League Baseball. It just seems like there's a lot of just randomness in terms of where these elite arms come from out of the bullpen. And it's probably a lot of like bullpen's usually like not your first option pretty much ever.
Sure.
Right.
You want to be a starter.
Right.
If you're a pitcher, or if you're a position player, like you only come out of the bullpen when you play 12-year-old baseball and you're the shortstop on the team. And you're like, hey, we need another arm. You're going to go in.
Right. And so it's kind of a strange, it's sort of a strange position in the sense that you almost have to, and it's a very baseball-y thing. You almost have to fail before you can even get to the position where you're going to succeed.
Well, Rick Ankiel was a perfect example of that.
Well, yeah. So, the dude he's a really good pitcher, gets the yips, goes back down to the minors, becomes a position player, and has a nice long stretch as a position player after several years in the minors.
Hit the backstop.
Right, yeah. And then he ends up just mashing for a handful of years. it's just a very strange, like the finding guys that are confident in the bullpen, because that's what a lot of the closing is, right? Like a lot of guys throw 98, 99, 100 now. That's not that
well,
uncommon.
and that's half the battle. You have to be able to do that in order to have a roster spot on teams.
And so, but most of the guys on the rosters have that ability, right? But there's still a bunch of dudes that you just don't want anywhere near those high leverage situations. And so much of it is mental, but you're dealing with guys in bullpen arms that have already failed at what they were trying to do for the most part, right? Most guys don't come out as ready-made closers, even guys that you draft from college in that role. Sometimes that's kind of what you're going for, but usually those are later round draft picks and stuff like that. It's just it's a thing that fascinates me because it's not one of those positions that you sort of like pigeonhole early. You know, almost every other position, whether it's in baseball or basketball, football, whatever, you pigeonhole that person in that position early and figure out like, hey, we think they can be this. So let's kind of prepare them for that. You know, you hear Coach Rhule talk about it a lot of like preparing guys and putting them in situations to be successful. Bullpen arms almost the exact opposite. You put them in a position they had to have failed to end up there in the position now, and then you need them to be wildly confident and successful to have any chance of winning in the postseason. It's such a super strange dynamic to me.
TK on YouTube is regretting cashing out his Diamondbacks World Series bet.
Oh no!
Yeah, can't be doing that. And you know what? I'm not a cash outer. If that doesn't shock a lot of people.
No, you're riding with it.
Yeah, hands down. And I don't really get a lot of bets out there that have cash outs.
Okay.
Because the bets that I do or place are so wild and insane.
But you're winning.
That if I parlay 3 guys to score goals in a hockey game, well, it's so rare that this guy is going to score a goal in a hockey game that they're not going to offer a cash out because the odds of that happening already is like 12%, like 15%.
Yeah.
It's even worse when I bet on a guy to hit a home run, which I did bet on Alec Boehm to hit a home run yesterday, product of Omaha, Nebraska.
That's right, Omaha.
Can you believe the Huskers did not recruit him out of college out of high school?
Yes, I can.
He went to Wichita State, and now he is what? The third baseman in Major League Baseball.
There is there's a proud tradition of Nebraska not previous staffs at least not recruiting high quality Omaha talent and them ending up at various places, including Wichita State.
But it is funny, though, going back to our point about just the mentality you have to have this late in the postseason. You look at what the Rangers offer and you look at what the Diamondbacks offer. And you would have to just think on paper, you have to lean the Rangers direction.
Sure.
The Diamondbacks are so young.
So young. Yeah.
They are so young. And that's not to say that, oh my goodness, yes, they have, Ketel Marte and Zach Gallen, and I don't really know how old Merrill Kelly is, but he sounds older than he probably is.
I think just because his name is Merrill.
Right. But they're just a very young baseball team.
Yeah.
And then you look on the other side of the spectrum and you have guys that have been there before. You have Nathan Eovaldi.
Yeah.
You have Max Scherzer. You have Corey Seager. I could probably just keep going off this list.
Well, and the other thing about, and so they're also kind of the total opposite ends of the spectrum and how they're built, right? I mean, Diamondbacks, homegrown, young guys just coming up through the system. Most of these guys haven't gotten paid yet in terms of their big major league money. And then the Rangers are pretty much all second or third contract guys. This was a terrible baseball team 2 years ago. And they're like, hey, we don't want to be bad anymore. We're going to bring in some dudes. And they committed to it. And I give them credit for that, committing to being a winning franchise. And they spent a ton of money to put this team together, and it's done exactly what they paid
and they
for.
did it at the deadline too when they got Jordan Montgomery. They added starting pitching. This is a team that if you were playing the show, the video game, this is a team that you would build.
Absolutely.
This would not be a team that you wait 21 years for.
No,
in order to get back to the World Series.
Yeah, this is a very Yankees-esque type of roster, especially in like the late 2000s.
I mean, it's a Dodgers roster of a few years ago.
Yeah, Dodgers is a good example, a more recent example. Yeah, of just a team that they're like, hey, let's just put this thing together, right? And you know, I know a lot of people get kind of up in arms about like the building versus buying and stuff like that. The fact is, most teams you've got both, right? You've got guys that were brought up through the system and guys that you get in free agency or trades or whatever. But honestly, and I know this is super hypocritical, as long as it's a team I don't like, I really don't care when people buy their roster. Like when the Yankees do it, I'm like, oh, you bums. You've got no development. You've got no farm system. You're taking the easy way out. And, you know, but if the Red Sox were to do it, I'd be like, man, great.
Yeah, great move.
Great
move.
GM. Like when they brought in JD Martinez and, you know, they're bringing in, like back in the day, they bring in like Josh Beckett and like, I'm like, yes, absolutely. What a terrific move. That's how you use the farm system. You go sell them off for known commodities. I love it. Right. But Yankees do it. Astros do it. I'm like, oh, what a bunch of bums.
Yeah. I may have said that once or twice when the Cubs won the World Series, but they were pretty homegrown to begin.
A lot of them
with.
were. Yeah. They got some. They went
and got a Roldis Chapman,
Yeah.
and that was just such a crazy deal because they gave up Gleyber Torres, who was their #1 prospect for a guy for half the season, who ended up going back to the Yankees right after that. But they did get their World Series, so that's all that matters.
Yeah,
right?
you would trade everything. That's the thing. Like, you know, there's these trades that happen. Like, oh man, you gave up this guy and that guy and whatever. If you get the guy that helps you win a World Series, none of that matters.
And you know, with the Rangers too, you have Adolis Garcia who is just playing out of his mind.
Anybody could have had.
I said this yesterday. Is he not Randy Arozarena?
Yeah.
Like that's the same hype that he's carrying through this postseason, that when he steps up to the dish, you think he's going to do what Randy Arozarena did 2 years ago.
Yeah. You think he's going yard every single time.
Was that 2 years ago? Or was that last year? Good Lord. Everything runs together at this point.
I would say time has no meaning to me anymore.
I think it was 2 years ago, but I could be wrong. Oh, I should have looked that up ahead of time. But no, Adolis Garcia, 2019, DFA'd by the Cardinals. 2020, DFA'd by the Rangers.
Yeah.
And then picked up again.
And everybody let him go. Everybody's just like, no, we're cool here. And then he comes back. You know, the waiver system in baseball is so strange because you see these guys that you would think, hey, everybody would want that guy. I mean, this is, again, a long time ago, but there was a point where the Red Sox waived Manny Ramirez at one point, and no one picked him up.
What year was this?
Like
year of age for him. Do you know?
It was still when he was like
in his prime.
Yeah, it was early 30s, I think. So I want to say it was 31,
was
32.
Was it when he cut off a throw from center field?
It was like peak weirdness too, as well. So in his prime, but also prime Manny Ramirez weirdness. So that's fair. But he also had a big contract at the time, and he legitimately just passed through waivers, and everybody's like, no, we're good. And they're like, well, I guess you can come back to the Red Sox then. It was the strangest thing. I think they were trying to create not roster space, but, you know, they wanted to clear some money off the books to sign somebody else. But it was a bizarre time.
You know, Manny Ramirez not only killed my childhood in Boston, but he also killed it in Los Angeles.
Oh, what did he do in Los Angeles?
When he was with the Dodgers.
Yeah, no, I remember that.
I went to the DS game, I believe it was. Oh, I'd have to look up what year, but it was the year that Matt Holliday missed the fly ball that could have sealed the win for the Cardinals. Do you remember that when he got hit close to the no-no square? Was that what it was?
I don't remember.
No. He tried to basket catch it and just completely blundered it, right?
Yeah, okay.
And man, I mean, there's
I believe the Dodgers came back and won that game. I'm trying to think back into the long-term memory storage unit of my brain, but I can't think of it exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was somewhere around like the 2012.
So he was in
2014.
He was in LA from 08 to 10.
Okay, so then it was way before. It was probably then
Yeah.
like 9 or something when Holiday had that play.
Yeah, because Holiday came over to the Cardinals in like 07, right? Somewhere in there.
Sorry, I'm typing in.
I think
his drop.
I think Matt Holiday came to the Cardinals in like 07, I want to say. Because I remember him in like the
2009. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Right.
there's-
Yeah.
But yeah, Manny Ramirez that was a weird dude.
NLDS game 2, 2009. I was at the game. I could tell you like where I was seated too in Busch Stadium, but I couldn't tell you the inning, or I couldn't even get back to that date. When did you say? Oh, you were asking when Holiday came over. It was about that time because he was in Colorado. And was he an Oakland guy too?
Holiday, yeah, he was Oakland first, I believe. I think he started in Oakland, in Colorado, then St. Louis.
He went Colorado, then Oakland,
okay.
then St. Louis.
Okay.
So he came over in 2009. But Matt Holiday was really good for the Cardinals. Like won a World Series with the team.
Yeah. No, he was very good.
Had a lot of good seasons, 2010 through 12, and then 15. I think he was an all-star. So he had a lot of great. His most productive seasons came with the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, so they just to land the plane on the Manny Ramirez thing, they waived him in 2008, which was he was mid-30s, but he was still pretty productive at that point. And then they ended up trading him later that year. But yeah, Manny Ramirez got waived just outright, and everybody's like, no, we're cool. Like the waiver system in baseball is totally nuts.
Hey, we're fine.
It's a very strange. I mean, guys get like Rule 5 draft. Like Johan Santana, who was one of the best pitchers in like the mid to late 2000s, was like a Rule 5 draft pickup because nobody protected him. It was, I mean, baseball's wild.
It is wild.
The places that you find stars is insane. Coming up next, what do we want to talk about next? We got some things. The Michigan thing keeps getting weirder.
How about let's tease this, the newest piece of information, which may be even the craziest piece of information.
Also, Arch Manning might not be good. We'll do that and more coming up next.
Are you feeling good? You feeling okay? What are your vibes?
Here we go on a Wednesday. Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi, Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me as well. We were talking before the break about some interesting things going on in college football. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Let's start with Michigan.
Okay.
Michigan keeps getting weirder.
Yeah, this whole situation, the update is so much bigger than you would expect for a story that's as ongoing as it's been over the last week.
And it felt like we kind of had our arms around it in terms of like what actually kind of happened and stuff like that. And then yesterday, they dropped the update of, okay, it wasn't just a Big Ten deal. He was buying tickets to SEC title games and to Clemson and Georgia and a bunch of
just teams in college football playoff contention.
Yes, basically. Yeah. Basically anybody that looked like they were a college football playoff contender, which is funny because yesterday you're like, hey, they didn't do it against these teams. And at the time we didn't think so. And you're like, and you could tell.
Which makes it even worse.
Which is
that you bought tickets to Georgia.
Which is hilarious. And then did you see Kirby Smart's comments yesterday?
Yeah, I think he's like, yeah, we blew the barn doors off of them.
He's like, yeah, there's nothing I saw in that game that would lead me to believe that's true. He was like, yeah, didn't look like they had scouted us at all.
Well, and it goes back also to what Dion said yesterday of him saying, like, you still got to beat the team. You may know everything that they're doing, but you still got to beat them. And that also just shows how strong of a team Georgia is and has been over the last handful of years.
Their entire defense plays for the Eagles now, so that's nice. I mean, for them to have had that in college.
But it is funny because you have the game plan and you still got whooped.
Yeah.
You have everything. You have everything in front of you. You have the answers to the test and you still failed.
You've got to be at least in the neighborhood for it to matter. Right. And that's the thing that, like, listen, it's not going to help. Nebraska having all of Michigan's signals would not have helped Nebraska beat Michigan. Like, it might have been closer. Maybe they stay in it a little bit longer, which is, I think, what a lot of people were hoping, that it would, be competitive, at least through the first half. That's not helping Nebraska beat Michigan. There's too big of a gap there. apparently there is at least that same size gap between Michigan and Georgia, which is, or at least there was, right? They've lost a lot of guys, but that, which is horrifying to think about, because I think we all think Michigan's pretty good. But no, you've got to be close. You've got to be in the neighborhood for it to matter at all. And if you're not, then yeah, they could tell you what play you're running. I mean, a bunch of the 90s Huskers used to tell me all the time. They would tell the defensive linemen in front of them what they were running, and it just didn't matter. They would say, "Hey, yeah, coming right at you, big guy," or like going option this way. This, like, they would tell you exactly, like they would tell the guy in front of them exactly what was about to happen to him. It's like the old Larry Bird stories where he'd tell you what movie's about to do, and then he'd do it anyway, and you couldn't do anything about it. That's what basically happens when there's too much of a gap between you and the person you're playing. Is you could straight up tell them exactly what's happening, and it does not matter,
right?
Because they can't stop it. Now in the Big Ten, I think it has mattered, most likely, with some of these games, right?
Yeah, but definitely in the East. The past two Ohio State games, I'd be curious to know
if Penn State games.
Yeah,
those are the ones that I start to look at and go, which is, what's funny, if they had only done it in the games that teams were close to them, they probably don't get caught. Like if you use it sparingly enough,
right? Yeah, but they did it with every single team.
But all the time.
But that's the itch, right? Like if you ask any criminal out there, hey, how'd you get caught?
This is exactly
it's because you got comfortable.
This is not just comfortable. You got greedy.
Well, greedy and comfortable, though, right? Because you found out that
you're like, oh, this works. Yeah,
do this and do it maybe better or bigger next time. And then you're like, well, if I can do it here, I probably could do it here. And if no one's ever catching me, I could probably do it here and here and here and here.
Yeah.
And then that goes to the greed that you're speaking to, but that also goes out of your comfort zone. And now you put a bigger target on your back.
Yeah. John says something funny on Twitter here. He goes, how about the fact that Michigan's worst year under Jim Harbaugh was the year fans weren't allowed in the stands? Yikes. Wolverine! Not wrong, though. No, but
a lot of humor.
I mean, listen. So I don't know how many people know this. In my day job, I'm a fraud investigator for financial institutions. Right. I can tell you with absolute certainty the reason that we catch people is because they get greedy. Like there is a certain threshold that if you're having to monitor a certain number of transactions, or if you're you're doing this college football thing and you've got, at these stadiums, you've got 70, 80, 90,000 people. If you're doing something in a small manner, no one's going to catch you because there's too much white noise around to filter through it all to find anything. But every single person, whether it's a criminal, whether it's a fraudster, whether it's some dumbass from Michigan trying to record sidelines, it gets greedy. Every single one of them, because they get away with it a few times, and then you think they're
do it all the time.
They think, oh man, I've got the system beat. I'm the smartest guy in the world. I'm going to do this forever and no one's ever going to catch me. Did he do it? I rewatched Wolf of Wall Street the other day, right? Same deal, right? If he had stayed small relatively, right? No problems. Never gets caught, never goes to prison, probably still making millions, right? But everybody gets greedy because they think they're smarter than they are, and they think it can last forever. And you have to just, like, not encouraging bad activity here.
No, you're encouraging bad activity up to a certain point.
But like, if you get greedy, you're gonna get caught. And that's why every criminal gets caught when they do stuff like that. And that's why Michigan got caught.
You know what else was funny? And it was funny until you read later on in the article that the one school didn't find Stallion in their records because they didn't have access to search names in secondary markets, which that was also pretty humorous to me.
Yeah.
But they said 12 of 13 possible Big Ten schools have a record of Stallion buying a ticket at their venue. And I'm like, 12 of 13? What school was left out? What school did Michigan say, we're good? Like, no matter what, we don't need your sign.
We don't need
We're good. Is that Rutgers? Is that Indiana? Like, what school are we talking about here?
How bad are you going to feel if that's your school?
If that's Nebraska? How bad are you going to feel if that's Nebraska?
I'm gonna hope it's not Nebraska. It's got to be.
But Nebraska, you would have to think Nebraska has records of the secondary market, or like has the ability to go get those.
Yeah, I think the question is, okay, what team is, or what school seems like they don't have their stuff together, and to not be able to figure those things out. Rutgers definitely feels like an option.
State.
Michigan State. I bet Michigan State has it, and
I only said that because it was a rivalry.
And in the rivalry, I don't care how bad Michigan State is. Harbaugh's sending his dude to Michigan State. Like Indiana? Maybe they skipped Indiana.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who else is.
Well, outside of Rutgers,
Northwestern feels like they may not
borderline,
have borderline,
but outside of Rutgers and Indiana, I mean, I feel like that's what it comes down to. Just one of those two schools.
Yeah,
they're the only ones that really make sense in this scenario. But it is funny because Bald Book Tuber. I gotta find out his name because I feel like I said that last week too. He said it's clear Michigan cheated. It's also clear the NCAA will do nothing about it. They will select some voluntary punishment, and he says the toothless NCAA will say it's good enough, which that's a real possibility. But I did look up what could happen next.
Okay,
and the Big Ten could rain its terror down first.
So that's more likely than the NCAA, in my opinion.
Correct.
Right?
So the Big Ten sportsmanship policy states that Tony Petitti, who's the commissioner, has the exclusive authority to determine whether offensive actions have occurred. And then he could impose discipline for the members of that school or team. Mm-hmm. The Big Ten has two categories for discipline. The first includes fines that don't exceed 10 grand and suspensions of no more than 2 contests, which seem like absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. The second, for major disciplinary action, requires approval from an executive committee made up of representatives of different schools, which can deny proposed penalties or reduce them but not add to them, which I don't really understand. Like, are you referring back to point A, like the first part of that category, or is it, hey, we come up with something?
Yeah, I think they come up with something and you
present it,
yeah,
but you can't add to that presentation that you lay out there.
I think that's right. So theoretically, they could ban Michigan from the Big Ten title game if it got approved by the committee.
You know what, man? They could also strip J.J. McCarthy of a potential Heisman, if that's what it comes down to this year, and other things that really affect the players.
We'll see. Coming up next on Hurrdat Sports.
Hunting Wolverines. We will be back.
Okay, fair enough. Shane said he had a better clip than the one I wanted coming back, and he definitely topped
was right.
what I was
welcome back
for.
As we wrap up hour number 1 here on a Wednesday on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities as well. I'm Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me, and we're brought to you by our friends at Dingman's Collision Center. Dingman's has 4 area locations for your convenience. They can help you out with any make and model that you happen to be driving because they invest in the latest technology. They've been in business for over 25 years, locally owned and operated, and first place Best of Omaha for 18 years running. Best thing about Dingman's is they care about the community that they are a part of. They give back with every single repair they make through their community give back program. Make sure you go check it out at dingmans.com.
Right there.
All right, you had something. You had a question.
Going into the break, I mentioned how I feel bad for the players because J.J. McCarthy right now is the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, just past Penix this past weekend.
And I think back to what happened to Reggie Bush, and which I still don't think. I still think he deserves his Heisman back.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in this scenario, I could really see an example being made out of Michigan, like as much as people may doubt what the NCAA can or will do. But if they do make an example out of Michigan, they could strip a Heisman Trophy from J.J. McCarthy at year's end. If they play for a national title and win, that could be stripped or should be stripped at this point. And so I really feel bad for the players because chances are they didn't know or were just out of the loop, or most of them were out of the loop. Because when you practice for any opponent, you listen to your coach, right? The coach tells you what to plan for. The coach tells you what to practice. You have a scout team that studies other teams' game film to run that against your offense or your defense. And all that does is the scout team's probably just sitting there in a room watching film. The coach is like, hey, this is the play you're going to run. You're going to run it just like this. It's like we did it in high school, right? You have huddle film. You watch how a team plays, runs plays, and that's what you plan for, right? That's why you have coaches sharing footage in high school, because it allows you to plan for your opponent, right? But that's universal. Everybody does that. In college football, you can't do that in game unless you're watching the game on TV, but that's why they don't ever show the sidelines fully. But when you know what's coming, it's easier to play against,
absolutely.
To draw up an audible or a certain play that can beat that thing. So that's why I feel bad for the players, because it all stems in practice. They're like, wow, we're really prepared. We know exactly what they're going to do, what they're going to run. We have, like, our coaches are so great. They picked up on different signal calls and, like, gosh, we play for the best coaches in America. Like, that's probably what they're thinking.
Sure. Yeah.
And then they see an article pop up of Michigan kind of in some choppy waters because they may or may not have had somebody on their staff recording at games. Started pretty loose, right? Because even I took it loosely.
Yeah.
I said on the show, I don't really believe it. Well, that quickly changed 2 days later when another report came out. And now another report, another report's coming out. How do you think these players feel at Michigan right now? Do you think they feel like their coaches failed them?
Yeah, I don't know if they feel like their coaches failed them. And I want to go back to a point you made a second ago. Even if the players did know, there's nothing they can do about it, right? Like, they're not going to convince their coaches to stop scouting in this way.
Well, also, they may not know the rules if they did know.
I'm guessing
they may have been told, hey, we can do this.
Yeah, A, I'm guessing they don't know the rules. B, even if they know the rule and they know what's going on, it's not like you're going to have somebody go to Jim Harbaugh or to whoever and be like, hey, I don't want to do this. Like, what are you going to do there? It's not like he's going to stop, like, implementing the game plan. It's already done, right? And so you're right. They're in an awkward position. I just don't know. I don't know that they would penalize, like, a JJ McCarthy specifically. I think it's team penalties, right? So you're looking at, okay, if they win the Big Ten, could they strip them of that or make them vacate it? If they win a national title, could they strip them of that or vacate it? Whatever.
Yeah, because Travis goes, I don't think they can strip a national or a college football playoff title. I think the NCAA can do whatever they want.
Well, so
like,
the NCAA doesn't run the college football playoff, so they technically couldn't strip the Big Ten would be able to strip a Big Ten title, but the college football playoff would have to, it's its own entity. So they would have to strip, and maybe that's more likely, right? Because since, kind of like we were talking about earlier, the NCAA is pretty toothless. Maybe it's more likely that they have a team, or that they have a separate entity, whether it's like the Heisman Trust that stripped Reggie Bush's Heisman Trophy, or the College Football Playoff Committee strips a national title or something like that. I don't think if it's left in the NCAA's hands, I'm guessing it'll be like slaps on the wrist, maybe some like voluntary suspensions, the way they kind of did with Jim Harbaugh earlier this year, where they kind of negotiate an agreement. But I do think it's more likely to be team-focused stuff rather than player individual.
Yeah, you know what, though? With the college football playoff, because they stole signs from teams that are in college football playoff contention or have been there, I wonder if that separate committee that you're talking about that the NCAA isn't a part of would choose to still be a part of this stripping process.
Which they might. That might be. And it's, my guess is it's more likely they would go back and vacate. You know how sometimes they'll vacate like a Final Four appearance. It's like you didn't actually win the national title, but, you know, like John Calipari technically never made the Final Four at UMass anymore because they stripped that from him. My guess is it's more likely something like that, where, because obviously Michigan hasn't won a title in the college football playoff era, where they say, hey, we're vacating your appearances the last two college football playoffs or something like that. So you have to take down the banner or whatever it is at that point, and they stop putting you in the record books. It's largely academic, right? If you don't actually win a title for them to strip something of you. But, you know, I do think it's more likely that an outside entity makes a decision like that than the NCAA. I think the NCAA is probably not going to drop the hammer on Michigan. They historically don't drop the hammer on like blue blood programs.
Yeah, it's just interesting to kind of see all of this evolve to what it has become. Because as I shoo a fly away, I don't know how a fly got in here. Shane, did you leave the door open?
No,
not this time.
It's just crazy to me that, you know, Jim Harbaugh is still today.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know anything about it. I don't know this. I don't know that. Like, how much do you think people really believe at this point, especially after you came into the season on recruiting violations?
Yeah, already having been suspended, already having these other allegations out in the air. It's like, yeah, I think Jim Harbaugh maybe just doesn't like run the cleanest program in the world. And it's sort of interesting because this is the longest he's been at any stop. So you wonder how much like maybe he was doing this stuff before and it just never caught up with him before he left.
Maybe. I also think it's just, when he got there, he was under, just major fire.
Yeah.
For not being able to win the big game, not getting Michigan.
Well, especially after 2020.
Right. Not getting Michigan back to relevance like they wanted to be, or at least in the top, we'll call it top 10, because Michigan never consistently was there until Jim Harbaugh has been doing it over and over and over. Well, maybe it was that Grady thing that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't getting there. He was feeling a ton of pressure and he's like, I got to change something.
Yeah.
I got to give myself an advantage. Boom. He finds a way to get that advantage because that's about the same time that Stallions started to like really go knee deep into this.
Yeah. If you want to, if you're taking the reports at face value, this started, I believe, in 2021. It's been going on in 2022 and then this year as well. So it would theoretically have started right after he was on the hot seat for 2020.
And what was everybody saying? Is Jim Harbaugh this? Is Jim Harbaugh that? Should he go back to the NFL? Should he get off of coaching, Michigan? Should Michigan fire him? Like those were real claims that were made against Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, in 2020, he was legitimately on the hot seat. They had not finished inside. So 2019, they finished outside the top 10. 2018, they were pretty good. 2017, they were pretty bad. Didn't finish ranked in the final college football playoff poll. 2016, they were pretty good, but they were pretty inconsistent and up and down before 2020. He has that bad 2020 where they're 2-4, and then all of a sudden it's college football playoff,
and Michigan is back
and on the way back to college football playoff. The timing and the results seem oddly suspicious. I mean, they hadn't lost fewer than 3 games in a season under Jim Harbaugh until 2021.
And Terrence on YouTube says the players don't question the validity of the source, the information provided by coaches during game planning. It's exactly what I said at the beginning.
For sure. Yeah.
It's exactly what I led off with was this is a situation of I am going to listen because that is my job. My job is to listen to what the coaches are telling me. Yeah. And now I have to use what I've learned in practice all week and for the game on Saturday.
Yeah,
that's it. That's what a player does.
Yeah, you're saying, hey, my coach has put me in a position to succeed.
If you are a player, you are a sponge. You soak up everything that they tell you, that they show you, that you see, and then you apply it on the field.
And I've got direct knowledge of this because when I was coaching college basketball, there were teams that were dumb enough to send us video or that had them uploaded, because this was not pre-Huddle, but before Huddle was like widely adopted, especially at some of the lower levels. They would send us video that had audio on it. So we could hear them calling out, making their calls. And so we would write it down.
Which is rare.
We would scout. It wasn't as rare as you think.
Really?
I don't think people just knew. And a lot of people at that level, especially at the time, weren't putting that level of effort into scouting. And so every time we got video with audio on it, we would write down calls and we'd be like, okay, when they call this and
when they call Kentucky 3, this is what the play is.
Level of advantage it gave us because we knew exactly what they were running was enormous.
Can you, on the other hand, thank Michigan right now for where the Big Ten is at right now as a conference?
I mean, the Big Ten's better when Michigan is good.
But another team could be just as good.
Yeah, like let's get Nebraska good. Welcome back. Hour number 2 getting kicked off here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me.
Hello.
And we are about to be joined by Brian Christopherson on that Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. But I want to tell you about Warhorse a little bit. It's the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. You got to go in person to the casino, but there's plenty of kiosks, plenty of sportsbook tellers, or you can build your bets on the app, the Warhorse Casino app, then take your phone to the casino, scan the QR code, and place your bet in person there. They've got pretty much every major sporting event. They've got straight bets, parlays, props, live in-game bets, all things.
Do a little horse racing.
Yeah, all things like my guy over here. You seem like an in-game bettor. Are you a live?
No, I'm more of a before game bettor. But if
Okay.
I'm down and I feel down,
Yeah.
I'll like start like throwing together some random live in-game things.
I kind of like in-game bets because I sort of get this. I feel like on games where I'm like, hey, I kind of have a sense of how this is going to go.
Yeah, you see one team really performing.
Yeah, and usually in the first few minutes, the line doesn't change that much. You can still get the kind of the pretty close to the number you want, but you have a little bit of an idea of how a team comes out. So, I mean, you can do all those things over at Warhorse Sportsbook. No bets, no glory. Joining us on that hotline is our friend Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. BC, how are you this morning?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys?
Good.
We're doing well. Let's start with the Michigan thing a little bit. I mean, what are your just kind of thoughts as more and more reports about this, alleged cheating scandal comes out? Because at first it kind of felt like, okay, maybe this is just sort of maybe a one-off, not kind of isolated incident. And then as more and more reporting comes out, it seems to be a vast and large conspiracy. I guess just how have you sort of processed all these reports have come out about Michigan?
Yeah, I don't even know if I've seen the latest 1 or 2 reports, Ravi, if there's been something this morning or whatever, but
just the stuff yesterday about the SEC teams and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I know Matt Rhule was answering in general at his press conference about sort of sign stealing and how it happens, within games against the team you're playing. And that's sort of the part of the competition, and that's usual. But he also spoke in general about, it's a different category if someone is, coming into the stadium and it breaking a rule that's written down. And that's the bottom line. And I'm only bringing what he said into it because I liked how he said it, because I kind of nodded my head and I thought this is one of those deals where people will push it to the side and say, oh, it's no big deal. They're a great team anyway, whatever. Are we really going to make a thing about that? Is that what is getting them over the top? But rules are rules. And at some point, I think we need to get back to some of these deals where if you broke the rule, there's an actual punishment for it, because there are actually some people who are abiding by it. And I know there's some people say, well, you're naive. That's not true. I don't think so, because there's a lot of coaches, I think, around the country that are pretty peeved about what Michigan did in this situation. And I think they lost a lot of respect from a lot of peers if these allegations, which there seems to be more and more evidence of, sort of are proven. So I think it's I think there should be a pretty good penalty for it. I'm not saying that's why they're winning games. They're a great team. They would be probably undefeated regardless. But still, it even makes it more mind-boggling why you kind of go to that category of doing something like that when you have the type of team you do already.
Well, BC, we were kind of talking during the break, unsure if they would still be undefeated or if they would carry like one loss at season's end. And, if Michigan didn't go about stealing signs, if this all comes out to be true, is Ohio State where Michigan should be? And is Penn State where Ohio State should be? And would Michigan then fall into that third tier of top Big Ten teams? Or would Michigan still be in that second tier? We just really don't know. And I'm kind of curious on your thoughts on that. If you think Michigan would take a drop or would take a loss and be out of the college football playoff. And if they did steal these signs just to get that one win to guarantee them in the college football playoff.
Are you asking if I think they could get penalized? Okay.
I guess I'm really just asking, if Michigan didn't go about doing like the things that they did, would they be the number 2 team in the country, or would Ohio State the past 2 years have taken that spot instead of them?
I mean, that's impossible to know, I guess. I don't doubt that Michigan had a good enough football team that they might have done close to what they did. But the thing is, we don't know that. And in a way, to me, it doesn't matter because I think it's kind of back to that point. Like, we've got rules, and let's start playing by the rules a little bit around here. There's a lot of leeway right now within college football for a lot of different categories with NIL and stuff like that, where you can make hay and actually be within the guardrails because no one actually knows where the guardrails are. But in this case, we actually set them on the side of the road and said, hey, you can't do this. You can do this. This does happen, but don't go over here. And it appears they went over there from what we're seeing. We will, let it all play out, I guess. But yeah, I think it's really damning stuff. And the way Ravi asked the first question, I was kind of in that camp when this story started, like, yeah, whatever. I admittedly kind of put my hands in the air about it. And the more and more I read about it, the more kind of annoyed I get with what I think Michigan was doing. And maybe it's a petty thing to some people, but I just go back to, like, come on, it's on paper. You don't need to do it. And what I was curious when you're asking that question, Andrew, is what happens, like, with the committee with this team. If they go undefeated, I think they'll be in. But let's say they lose one and there's a big debate, about who's that fourth team, and it's really scattered for that spot. You wonder if they're not going to get the benefit of the doubt now, and I would think they maybe won't.
BC, I'll let your mind deflate from my very complicated question to decipher.
Deflate's a good word for this, too.
and ask you maybe something a little simpler here. What do you think is the extent of the punishment? You kind of you alluded to it with that last point, but if there is a lot of truth that comes out about this and they're like, okay, we have to punish this team in some way, shape, or form, what do you think the extent is? Is it as deep as, hey, we're going to strip, whether it's a potential Heisman Trophy from their quarterback, like the Heisman voters are going to do something there, or the college football playoff, things like that, we're going to strip a title, or is the NCAA just going to stay out of that business and just do something like, hey, we're stripping a Big Ten championship?
Yeah, I don't know yet. I mean, that's the thing that's going to be really interesting. I haven't seen if anybody's gotten sourcing on what could happen. I would guess the NCAA doesn't want to get out too far in front of their skis yet, with what might happen. That's why my mind kind of goes to what's in front of us right now over the next month and a half before that all plays out. And it's not that I think someone's going to intentionally say, this team we put at number 5 that was 11-1 because of this situation. But it just makes me ponder if there's enough animosity about it in the air by the time we get to that final vote. If Michigan does lose one game, I'm just curious if, like, human nature takes over a little bit there and someone else gets the bump over them. But that's just me speculating. And but this story's going to be out there like every day, every week for the rest of the season. So it's going to be hard for, honestly, Michigan's going to have to really work hard as a football team, the guys on it, to focus around it, and keep playing at the level they are. Maybe they're going to rally around it and do that whole thing where they think everybody's against them for no reason and play really well. That could very well happen. But, it's a messy deal, and it's way more messy than I realized even 6 or 7 days ago.
We're talking with Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. Let's switch gears to Nebraska here a little bit. And maybe, I know we talk about the injuries on offense a lot, but it almost feels like we don't fully appreciate how sort of ridiculous it's been. I know several people have asked Coach Rhule and Coach Satterfield, like, hey, have you ever experienced anything like this? Both of their answers were no. Like, do we fully appreciate how absurd the situation on offense has become?
I think most people get it. I'd say since I've been covering this team, I started as a beat writer in 2007, last year of Callahan, and I did it some in college before that. But I've never had one press conference that I was at where we had, take the Gabe Ervin, Ramir Johnson day first off, that Monday. I've never had one that I remember quite like that, where there's been bad injury news, but not like, oh, it's the top 2 guys on the same day right here at the very position that everybody says this whole operation needs to center around with this offense and running the ball and all that stuff. And they're gone. And so you get that day. And I was like, well, that's pretty rough for a first year for a staff. And then to have that basically happen times 2 now with the O-line, you know, with the Piper Corcoran news, and Nuri's out for a couple weeks at least. Nothing like it. I can't compare it. There's been better player. I hate to get into this discussion, but there's been times where like a top level guy was injured that maybe produced a little bit more than some of them, but not like the whole collection where it's like, okay, 2 or 3 guys from this spot at the exact same moment. And sort of when not everyone's expecting it. I think coming out of Saturday, the big discussion was about Ben Scott, because he'd been down on the field, and it ends up like, you know, Corcoran's out, who had finished the game off, and all this stuff. That so there was there's been names or 2 that have popped up where you're like, oh, I didn't even really know that was coming. And honestly, after he delivered the news on Monday, there was like a 5-second just sort of silence. Like people were kind of collecting the thought, like, okay, that I got to process that. Did I hear all the names right? Is it no Ben Scott? Corcoran's one of them. You know, it's just it's been a really strange deal, but I like what Satterfield's approach was, because it's the only way you can do it. Yesterday, he turned it forward and is just like, you know, we got a lot of young guys and they're excited to play, and let's go, you know, and that's all you can do. But yeah, it's been something unbelievable. And I hope people like can put it in perspective compared to most years. This is not normal what we've seen.
Yeah. And we haven't even talked about the wide receiver room, which, because it didn't happen at the same time, right?
Yeah.
You still lost 2 of your top 3 guys, your top guys out for multiple weeks at least. And then one of your top 4 guys quit before the season started. Right. So the wide receiver room might be in the worst shape of all of them. And we're not even talking about that one anymore. The reason I asked that question, though, I guess, is because it seems like, and it's, you know, kind of human nature while you're watching a game, but it seems like people are still really critical of how the offense looks, and kind of rightfully so, in that it hasn't looked great. But it's just, how do you balance those 2 things of like, yeah, the offense doesn't look very good. Also, no one is healthy that we ever thought was going to play for us.
I think you can find a balance with it by the fact that we don't have to expect them to be a high-flying attack, but we should expect them to knock some unforced errors out of the way. There's been some stuff that has been mistake riddled that has nothing to do with some of the injuries. You know, you just got to catch snaps. You've got to have exchanges that are proper. They've just left the ball on the turf too much. And Rhule talked about this on his radio show last night. Interceptions will sometimes happen. You got to keep throwing the ball some, but he hasn't had a team maybe that's put the ball on the ground as much as this. And they had 3 times that ball was on the ground in the first 35 minutes, and they got them all back. And that's why we're not talking about that as much. But that's been a real problem since, you know, first game when Anthony fumbled against Minnesota, and then Colorado, obviously, with the drop snaps. It really hasn't gone away. It's always kind of poked its head out. So when I look at the offense, it's like, I know you're limited in what you can do, but let's stop watching that stuff. You know, like where you have 2 or 3 series like the beginning where Rhule says it was so bad it hurt his lips to even try to make an excuse for it. You know, that's the sort of stuff where they can be better than that, even with the personnel that's on the field. And it'll be interesting Saturday. It's not like the O-line is going to trot out guys who don't have some experience. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but Prohaska's started games. Henry Lutovsky's played a decent amount of football by now. And Justin Evans-Jenkins is a guy they've really liked all year, and they've been trying to work in as sort of the 6th or 7th guy prior to this stuff. So you got to go out there and hope there's not one more guy who falls and is injured there. But if those guys stay healthy, you can work with that front 5 and still run the offense you've been trying to run, and hope to get some stuff done.
BC, speak to how unselfish this team is. Hearing Coach Rhule rave about Ethan Piper regarding the importance of reps for someone taking his position on the field has to be one of the most mature things I've heard in a while. Just the ultimate teammate. How does Piper and the rest of the guys embody the culture of putting others before themselves.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of guys like that over there, which has helped them this first year. Ethan Piper's a special dude, though. I remember when he was a recruit at Norfolk Catholic, he had committed or was going to commit, and I called him, and first off, he had like some musical that he was doing after school or something like that, because he was one of those guys who played in the band and was in musicals and all that, and he's in like, I'll call you back, I promise. I got to go to his Bible study, and so he went to that, and I'm thinking, well, sometimes you don't get the kids that call you back. They forget. He calls back immediately after it. But it was just like, I was thinking that this kid's like got all these things lined up. He's like the All-American boy. And he's always been that since he's been here. And so I'm not shocked he said that. And the context of it, of course, was, he thinks it'll be good for that because Justin's going to get those reps now, and it's going to help his development, and that's going to be good for him. And in the long run, it's one more guy in the program who has that under his belt after this season's over. But for him to say that out loud, not something a lot of guys would say in that moment when they're especially that first week when it just hits you so hard with that injury. So that's really cool of him. And I think he's a guy that is going to be very successful. I think he's going to be a teacher and coach after he's done playing, and he'll do very well at it.
BC, I want to switch over to the defensive side of the ball. One of the things that Tony White said yesterday that really stuck out to me was just this idea that, okay, maybe even though we don't love the way the offense looks, they've been a really important part in preparing the defense to look as good as they have. I guess that's not really something I had just kind of thought about before. How did you take that comment from him? I know he was trying to pay compliments to his other units, but it kind of makes sense though, doesn't it?
Yeah, I had asked him a question actually about what he thinks of the young linemen. That's where the question started. Like, what does he think of, like, because he sees them as much as anything because they've been on the scout team and they go against his guys, and like, how has he seen them build up? And he really took that opportunity to drive down that lane. And it's really smart for this team right now, because when Rhule sets a message on Monday, he goes up front and you can tell there's like 3 or 4 things that they're like points he's driving home. And he had one where he said he used his hands and he moved them far away. He's like, we can't be over here. We got to be here. And he put them together, and we got to be Huskers. And he was really, he's made that point a couple times. This has got to be a full team deal where you complement the other side of the ball as much as you can. And there is a part of this too. Some would say the offense isn't capable, and maybe there's some truth to that. But the offense, Marcus Satterfield's not doing exactly what he has dreamed of calling right now with this offense. We have to keep that in mind. I mean, he's working with the personnel he has. He knows that they just really need to not turn the ball over and win field position and set up this defense. And so the fact that the other coordinator, Tony White, like comes back and says, yeah, we're a great rushing defense right now. Not his words, mine, but you got to give a lot of credit to the physical practices that those guys on the other side of the ball have given us all off season. I mean, they've contributed to that defense being the type of tackling team they are and the type of group they are in the trenches. So I like how they're, I feel like there's good unity over there right now. And I don't think it's just words to say. I actually think they have it, and that they're going to need it with what's going on to win 2 or 3 more, and get where they want to be.
BC, for Nebraska to win this game this weekend, they have to do what?
Not turn the ball over more than once. And I mean, you can accept one that gets away or something that happens over the course of 60 minutes. And then I want to see the defense take that next step and, get, when they get pressure, force a fumble, have it be one of those games where someone's picking it up and running it back, or Tommy Hill could have had a pick 6 on like the 2nd or 3rd play of the game Saturday. Make that play. Like, that play's sort of been missing. Isaac Gifford's been a great player all year. I bet if you went back and had a real honest conversation with him, he wishes he could have that one back in Minnesota, in the end zone. So there's all these plays that have been right in front of this defense where they're aggressive. They're in position to be not just guys who stop somebody, but who take the game into their hands literally and take the football away and produce points themselves. I think they're going to have to do that a little bit down the stretch. Iowa's been a specialist in this, where their defense will get a pick six or whatever and win a game that way. On Saturday, maybe that's what it is. Maybe you win a game 17-13 and you have a defensive or special teams touchdown that puts you over the top. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's going to be something like that that's needed. And they got to win turnover battle. They got to win field position. Brian Buschini is going to have to be nails the rest of the way, where when they have a chance to pin someone inside the 5, they do it. All that little stuff is not little stuff. It's the stuff that's going to decide if they win.
BC, we'll get you out of here on this. About a minute left. For the people that don't hate themselves and haven't watched a ton of Purdue football this year, how big of a gap do you think there is, if any, between the Northwestern team that we saw on Saturday and the Purdue team that's coming up here this week? Because, I mean, those are two of the bottom teams in the league and certainly in the West. Just where do you see those teams at compared to each other?
I think Purdue's a little more dangerous on offense. And so the stuff that, it's not like I think they're a juggernaut, but the stuff that Nebraska did early on Saturday, if they did the same things, they might have been down like 10 or 14-0. And that, Nebraska's defense might have had something to say about that, but it would have been a lot harder to stop this unit. I have respect for Hudson Card. He's been around and he's good with his feet. Deion Burks is a guy who's averaging 60 yards receiving a game, so he's a dangerous weapon. And Maccabee got him pretty good last time these two met. He's a big back who I think started as a walk-on there and has kind of risen up. So I just think their offense is a little better. So Nebraska's offense has to be crisper, and Nebraska's defense played as they did play great at times, but they're going to have to maybe, knock out an explosive play or two that they allowed this past Saturday. It won't be easy, but they'll have to be dialed in, because Purdue has a couple guys where, the play where Omar Brown tracked him down. I don't know if they do that against Purdue. I think that's maybe a touchdown. So that's those kind of plays you can't have holes like that probably this week.
Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. We'll talk to you again next week, B.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, BC.
We are halfway through the show here on a Wednesday. Andrew, did you lose your headphones here?
Nope.
You good?
Yep.
You good?
I'm just looking at Shane.
What up, Shane? Coming up here in just a minute, we're going to talk to our friend Andy Kendeigh from KETV. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you about our friends, or maybe we call them our mentors, the Teammates Mentoring Program.
We had Eric on the show yesterday.
We did. So that was for Big Brothers Big Sisters, but he got started in Teammates back when he was at Nebraska. That's part of a lot of the athletic department down there works with the Teammates program. So it was started by Dr. Tom and Nancy Osborne back in 1991. And their mission is to positively impact the world by inspiring students to reach their full potential through mentoring. With the Teammates program, you meet with your mentee for about 30 minutes during the school day once a week. You can play games, you can just chat, you can do whatever you want just to connect with the kids there. And their surveys say that the mentors get almost as much out of this as the mentees do. So go to teammates.org to become a mentor today. Coming up here in just a second, we've got our guy Andy Kendeigh on that Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. Feels a little funny to give a casino read after talking about Tom Osborne, but hey, it's 2023. The world's changing a little bit here. Andy from KETV, what's going on, buddy?
What's happening? I have no issues with this.
Hey, AK, how you doing?
You can lead into me with the Warhorse anytime.
We appreciate that, Andy. Hey, so busy week. What's on tap for you this week?
Oh my goodness. Well, we take it one day at a time.
Day by day.
Just like Coach Rhule, right?
Day by day. Day by day, we try to get 1% better in that sports department.
And you know what? You and Matt Foster, iron sharpens iron.
That's right. And don't forget about the new guy, Matt Fatilli, who's really, it's interesting to get his perspective. When you get a new set of eyes on what we do and how things are viewed in this state, it's pretty interesting. Matt Fatilli started with us about a month and a half ago. And,
welcome, Matt.
He's been really like, I don't know, like eyes wide open in terms of how we deal with things and the importance of certain things over other sports. And he got a good taste because he had to cover the Nebraska-Wisconsin volleyball match on Saturday, and he was blown away.
Okay.
Like most people were. Even for people who have been around the block a few times, Saturday was a day for the ages. And now, talk about one of your first big-time volleyball matches to cover. That's what you get to do. I told him when he got, granted, it was like a 15-hour day for him. When he was driving back, we were talking, and I said, listen, I know today was kind of long, but I was like, 15 years from now, we're going to be talking about this match, and you're going to say I was there. I was like my first month on the job. So that was one of those unbelievable, memorable moments. And there's so many things, so many layers to that match on Saturday. Whether it be, the record crowd or snapping the losing streak against Wisconsin, the 1-2, the record viewership on BTN. College volleyball is on such an upward swing here, and it's in Nebraska's right smack dab in the middle of it. So that's pretty cool.
AK, I got a question because we talked about this earlier this week. Some of the things I heard coming into the season from just random fans was, does John Cook still have it to recruit with the best of them? Why aren't we ever splitting with Wisconsin anymore? Did he lose a step? Things like that. Do you think that volleyball win Saturday was a legacy win for John Cook because of the standard he's held to in the college volleyball world?
Certainly a signature win, right? Certainly one. And it showed that they can get it done, and they haven't in recent years. I mean, 10 in a row against any team is something to open your eyes. And for a team that just a mental hurdle to get over it. Now, granted, it was almost probably good that they have so much youth on that team. And, Merritt Beeson, a newcomer to that squad. So they don't have that, here we go again, maybe in the back of their mind. But, a great prove it Saturday for Nebraska, because they proved that they can hang with the best, and they can beat the best, and now they are the best, at least for now. And so, the way John Cook is recruited, I don't think anyone's questioning where Nebraska's status is nationally. They are a blue blood in the sport, and will be until further notice. The way this thing sets up down the stretch, it's going to be really interesting to see how they finish up. Are they going to be able to finish without a blemish, and see how it goes in the postseason? It is so hard. I mean, the Big Ten, guys, is such an incredible college volleyball conference that, forget about Wisconsin for a moment and just think about all the other teams we're going to have to play in the second half of the season. To even consider even have a discussion about them going unbeaten. They're like, okay, let's try to get through the weekend unbeaten. One of those deals. So it's going to be an interesting deal to see how these guys not only finish off the season, but how they improve during the season, because you want to be playing your best volleyball, end of November, early December.
Andy, signature win for Coach Cook and a big win for Coach Rhule on the same day. But who had the better celebration, the body surfing with Coach Rhule or the cowboy hat with Coach Cook?
That's a good question. I don't know. The body surfing thing was great. Though it was, obviously we're not in the locker room real time, but the Cook celebration, he's such an intense guy, to see him kind of, to crack those smiles, throw on the hat. It was one of those moments you're like, wow, that's really, really cool. And he talked about yesterday about the kids storming the court, and we talked about it afterwards. I guess there was so much security around that they just wouldn't allow the court storming with the kids. But if you're ever going to storm a court, that would have been the one to do it. But, John kind of took the storm to them. He went over there to make sure that the kids knew how much he appreciated their support. And, that's a real home court advantage for Nebraska. I mean, guys, when you look around the volleyball world, outside the Big Ten, even inside the Big Ten to some venues, and to see what some schools play in front of, and then you contrast that with what Nebraska has every single night. It is, man, Do not take it for granted. I know nobody does, but man, it is something special.
AK high school playoffs start this week for football this Friday. I'm sure you've examined the bracket thoroughly about potential matchups in the future and even finding the stronger first-round matchups to attend this Friday. But looking in Class A specifically here, is there a matchup that you're anticipating? One that makes you say, oh, man, if this team and that team wins, that's going to be a heck of a battle in round 2 or 3 or whenever?
Well, normally, guys, week 1 is kind of a get you through week, right?
Mhm.
You know, you kind of can figure, well, this team A is going to beat team B and probably by a big margin, right? There's a couple matchups in this Friday that really opens our eyes. How about Bellevue West and Papillion La Vista?
Yeah.
Talk about two teams. That is now, granted, the winner knows that they got to most likely get Westside, who, by the way, plays one of their biggest rivals in Creighton Prep in the opening round in the 116.
Good
But
defense.
I think that, yeah, absolutely. I look at that matchup and that's like, okay, that's a really interesting Bellevue West Papillion La Vista matchup. That's what we're going with our game of the week on Friday. But, you know, don't sleep on Millard North, Millard West. I mean, Millard North is playing much better football than they did at the beginning of the year. But looking ahead, you know, Millard South and whoever they get out of that Gretna Omaha North game, that one really is going to be intriguing to me. You know, Omaha North tends to peak during this time, and something tells me that Coach Martin has a run in him. And granted, they're just a 10 seed, it's 7-2, and granted they got to get through Gretna, and that's no easy task. But man, Omaha North, Millard South, even Gretna Millard South in that second round really is one of those intriguing. Like as you said, like looking ahead to we know about this week, but what about next week and maybe the week after? And then, you know, I really like Elkhorn South. They're starting to get a little bit healthier, and what happens when they make a run in the second, third, fourth round. So it's going to be fun in Class A. You know, obviously Westside is a team that people are just kind of penciling into Memorial Stadium, but you know, you still got to play the games. We've seen goofy stuff happen before in the tournament, so that's what makes postseason football so awesome. And we'll find out starting Friday.
Yeah, Andy, looks like it's going to start cooling off a little bit on Friday as well. So make sure you're all bundled up out there. It's going to feel like playoff time here on Friday.
Bring your parka. Bring your parka.
Maybe you have to go buy one out at a outfitter like Coach Rhule did the other week, right?
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
Andy, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, fellas.
Thanks, AK.
Coming up next, we're going to talk to Andy Classen of the WTL podcast, talk a little gambling here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi, Lulla. We're wrapping up hour number 2 here on the show, and we are brought to you by Dyer Law. Dyer Law has you covered in all of your personal injury needs, whether you've been in an accident or whatever else is going on. The Dyer Law team has you covered, and you can count on them. Give them a call, 402-393-7529, or visit them at dyer.law, where you can chat with trusted professionals about your personal injury claim. That's DYER.law. Joining us now from the WTL podcast is Andy Classen. Andy, what's going on?
What's good, guys? What's good? What's happening?
Not too much. Just about halfway through the week here, and it's about time to start talking about gambling as we kick off. You know, Thursday.
Time to talk about.
Well, yeah, for Andrew, it's always time to talk about gambling. But you know, Thursday's kind of the start of the football weekend. I know we get that midweek stuff. I was watching a little bit of Liberty U football because I love me some JB Chadwell last night. But for the non-sickos, football starts on Thursdays. So let's jump into the kind of weekend. I know that, you know, you focus a lot on Nebraska. They're a slight favorite this weekend. Are there any lines you like in that Nebraska game, whether it's the total, over, under, anything like that?
Well, yeah, you know, that's an interesting line because it opened up at 6.5. And then, as is the case with so many of Nebraska's betting lines over, 5-10 seasons, a lot of volatility. So I've already moved all the way down to 2.5. I'm a Rhule drinker. I believe in Matt Rhule. I believe that this team is picking up some steam. I think they can cover that 2.5 at home, and I love seeing all that Purdue money coming in early, giving Nebraska fans a spot to get in on it and feel good about it.
You think the injuries, Andy, is causing the line to drop as much as it is, or is it just recent results for Nebraska that's causing the line to move closer to that pick 'em mark?
Yeah, that's a great point there, because this is two teams that just don't cover. Purdue is, 4 out of the last 5 games they haven't covered. Nebraska only covered 2 of their last 5 games against Illinois and Northern Illinois. Maybe we should schedule some more teams out of Illinois. I don't know. But this is just a spot where that might have a little bit to do with it. But if you're a Nebraska fan and Nebraska better, that line always moves. Listening to you guys yesterday with Mike Schaefer, I like his take on it. I think Nebraska should have a little bit of confidence dealing with injuries, in the fact that they've been dealing with injuries all season long. So it's a next man up mentality. And he worded it in a very careful way where didn't want to throw shade at anybody on the offensive line. But we've had our problems. And will that drop off be that great? Probably not.
Yeah, Andy, you mentioned the defense and some of the injuries on the offense. Does that, that 39.5 over under, it's not like Purdue's really set the world on fire. Obviously, Nebraska's struggled to score throughout the year as well, and they've got that great defense. You like maybe a total on this game as well?
If I had to pick a total, I'm going under. These are 2 under teams. Last week's show, my partner and I kind of got in a disagreement over that, because I don't mind betting unders, and he's a big over guy.
It's more fun to bet the
Life's
over,
too
right?
short to bet the under.
It is more fun to bet the over.
Unless Iowa's playing, then it's not fun to bet the over.
Yeah, exactly. And no matter how low that thing goes, go with the under on that one. And unfortunately, with the injuries Nebraska's sustaining, even with quarterback, now offensive line, rotating in running backs. And I actually like where we're at with running backs compared to other spots. But you can't deny that we got freshmen across the board, and I'm excited to see these guys. But as far as putting up points, gaining yards, and covering a total, go with that under.
Hey, other games, Andy, that you're kind of focusing on around the Big Ten: Wisconsin, Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana. Let's go to the big one: Wisconsin, Ohio State. Ohio State, still a pretty big gap there between one of the top teams, in the Big Ten East and the top team in the Big Ten West.
Yeah, and a lot of times I like to put up a fight, or at least an argument, for the Big Ten West. I just can't do it this year. Don't be afraid of that 14.5 or now 15. I'm seeing a lot of 15 across the board here. Ohio State's going to cover. They are a team that covers. They've covered 4 out of their last 5, and the only one they didn't cover, they still won the game outright, Notre Dame, and it was a 3.5-point spread. They won by 3. So I like the Buckeyes. I think they're going to put it on Wisconsin. I know it's in Camp Randall, but this isn't the same Camp Randall and team. You want to talk about injuries for Nebraska. How about Wisconsin? And I don't like where these injuries are stacking up. Defense on all 3 levels: defensive ends, linebackers, cornerbacks, safeties. Wisconsin's dealing with a lot of injuries up and down their lineup, and it's not in a good place when you're going up against arguably the best offense and wide receiver core in the Big Ten.
So if you're really hammering Ohio State and that spread, the total's only 43.5 there. If it's as bad as you think Ohio State might get that number by themselves.
They could, and they've put up a lot of those points in the past. But to be totally honest with you guys, I'm probably going to sidestep it. And if I had to lean one way, and this will tell you what a sicko I am, I'm going under. 6 of the last 7, Ohio State has smacked that under. Now, it's not a fault of their own. I think it gets inflated. People talk about that offense, and your casual bettor will just go ahead and smack that over, right? Because it makes too much sense. Not the case. These books are sharp. They move that up. They adjust on the fly. This was another one where the point spread opened up at a 14. You're not going to find that anywhere. And in fact, I'm seeing a lot of 15.5 across the board now.
Penn State, Indiana, the other game I mentioned. Penn State, 32-point favorites over Indiana. And the over-under is 46.5. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are probably some sickos out there that will bet the under of this game too and expect Penn State to win this game 33-0.
So glad that we got to this game. An 11 o'clock kickoff. Yeah, Ravi, you open up this segment talking about sickos out there. Let's get into it here. Indiana at number 10, Penn State, coming off of a loss. But I'll tell you what, plug your nose, take the points. Penn State is going to cover this. And Indiana on the other side, they're a team that doesn't cover. This line opened up at a 27.5. Now it's moved up to 32.5. Penn State have covered every single game except for last week against Ohio State, where they're a 4-point dog. They've also won every game except for last week, where they dropped that game 20-12. Now, those point spreads also include a couple really, really lopsided numbers here. UMass was north of 40-point favorite. Delaware was north of 40 points. Penn State covered that. And I want to take you guys back to week 5 to prove this point about hitting that over. I like the over here. Week 5, 34-13. They're nursing away a victory over Northwestern. Northwestern, in desperation, with 2 minutes and 30 seconds left on the clock, threw a pick at about the 50-yard line. Got returned to the 30-yard line. You guys know what happened next?
No, I don't recall.
James Franklin called a fake kneel down, pop pass over the top, touchdown in Northwestern's face, in Northwestern to cover that. It was at 47. You think, okay, a couple kneel downs here, Penn State's going to get out. No, James Franklin wasn't going to have it. He was going to award everyone that bet the over. I think he's going to do the same here. Penn State in a big way. Plug your nose, take those points, eat those points. Nittany Lions, they're going to roll.
Let's get into the real sicko games in the Big Ten this week. We've got Minnesota and Michigan State. That is a 7-point favorite for Minnesota. I mean, are you even looking at these types of games like the Maryland, Northwestern, Michigan State, Minnesotas, or is it just clear stay away so you don't have to watch your bets?
You know, we on our show, and it airs on ESPN Tri-Cities, and it has the last couple of seasons now, right after the Doug and Daddy show, just an awesome placement for us. We always talk what people are going to be watching. And if you're a Big Ten lover, you kind of have to, don't you? You kind of have to keep your eye on Michigan State and Minnesota. And, man, I hate betting PJ Fleck, but too many things are pointing towards the Gophers here to cover that 7-point spread at home. I don't know. Like, when you think the guy's down and out, he somehow comes back like he did last week.
Hey, Andy, quickly here before we let you go, I'm curious, do you ever play props? Like, do you ever do prop bets for college football, or do you stick with just with the basic lines?
Oh, man, that's pretty tricky with college football. If we do props and we give them out every week, we kind of stick to pro football, and then that kind of bleeds into fantasy a little bit, you know. And that's really, I'm going to stay out of that. That's my partner, Jabron. He looks after those player props. And more times than not, he cashes. So,
well, in college, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this, too. I was going to say, in college, if you choose like the top wide receivers in college football, they'll normally hit their receiving prop.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is some value in that. That might be something we have to look at. It's just that how many yards you start looking at, like a receiving core like Ohio State. Go back to those guys. There's only so many yards in a game that those three guys can cover. Who's going to get them and how? Right now, they're leaning so heavy on Marvin Harrison Jr. Are they going to try and get other guys involved? So there's always that back and forth.
Andy Classen of the WTL podcast, as he mentioned on after the Doug and Daddy show on our friends at ESPN Tri-Cities. Andy, we appreciate your time, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
That is Andy Classen. He hosts the WTL podcast, part of the Hurrdat Sports podcast family, and our friends at ESPN Tri-Cities in Central Nebraska. Good stuff there. If you're a real sicko, want to bet some of those not so attractive Big Ten games, and it's a tough slate this week. I'm going to be honest with you. There's a lot of sicko games in the Big Ten this week. We will, you can listen to them and see where you're at. Coming up next, we've got Avarie Howard for the entire third hour here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me, and we are joined now by Avarie Howard, our friend and colleague here at Hurrdat Sports. Avarie, how you doing?
What up, Avarie?
I don't know if I can hear you guys. I don't know if you can.
Can you hear? Is this better? Check more. Yeah. No.
A little bit more.
A little bit more.
Yeah, I think
so.
We good?
What? We had that already dialed up there, and Shane's like, turn it down, turn it down.
The music in
Headphones
between
are
gets a little loud.
The
Okay, I think we're good.
That's your fault.
We good? Okay.
It's all good, Shane.
Can I ask a question real
Nope.
quick? And I don't mean to steal Avarie's thunder
No,
here, but
go ahead.
what is the demonstration team? I've never heard that before.
I think it was just he was like renaming the scout team. It kind of sounded like.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Because
that
they
would
kind
be
of like
right.
demonstrate what the other team's doing,
Yeah.
like what the opponent's doing for the next week.
All right, I'll move on. I'll
That's what I assumed.
turn the mic
Yeah.
off now.
See you later.
That's what I
I
assumed.
think.
I've never heard that term either.
He used it like
good
interchangeably,
assumption.
like right afterwards. It's like he almost like
Yeah.
caught himself. It's almost like maybe just like a
Like an
lingo
internal-
thing.
Well,
they
no
wanna
one likes to
use.
say the same word 3 times in a row in the same sentence.
Scout.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you use that, or if you use the word overcome.
You know what he
like, kids are
doesn't.
Like, I want to use a different word than overcome in my next sentence.
You know what he doesn't have a hard time saying over and over again
On the
is
grass.
on the grass. It drives me
Yeah.
crazy, and I don't know why.
Yeah. I think it might just be like an internal thing. Like I know like on soccer terms, like sometimes you'll be called like a reserve or a subs, but like some coaches on certain coaching staffs, like they won't use that at all. Like they'll call them game changers. They will not use like reserves or subs like at all. They just call them game changers, or like, here comes our new wave of game changers. So I think it might just be like a lingo belief thing potentially.
I think I would have preferred being called a game changer more. I was mostly called a scrub, which I did not love, but probably more accurate than game changer. Although
I was called Scrappy, so
I
I,
did-
don't know how much better that is.
Yeah, although game changer can be positive or
Yeah.
negative, so I might have been a game changer. I'm not gonna tell you in which
That's
way.
fair.
So Avarie, coming off of you and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, but coming off of that Northwestern game, I guess how did you feel overall about the performance? Because I think some people sort of walked away feeling a little lackluster,
Mhm.
just because we talked about this. It's not the prettiest thing in the world to
Yeah.
watch, but you still come out with the W there. I guess as you're kind of watching Nebraska turn into this Iowa-esque team, like how do you just process that in real time?
It was kind of similar to, I guess the way I processed it kind of to the Illinois game, because I walked away from that game on the road kind of feeling confident, just hearing what I'd heard after the Michigan game and then their response. And I think I was kind of surprised to see so many of the negative responses after the Illinois game, just because, it wasn't the prettiest, but it never felt like Illinois was threatening.
Sure.
And I felt like, that's a defensive side of the ball kind of thing. However, I did expect more of a dominant performance against Northwestern, but I think when you watch the way that I just think you have to remember, like, we have such high expectations, I think, so quickly, just because of how much reassurance we're being fed constantly week after week from this coaching staff, and just how much they're not in panic, it seems like. So I think our bar went from maybe the very bottom coming off last year as viewers and fans and media members to just kind of like setting it really high, because everything seems like it's so much better than where it was at, that when there's games like that, I think last year Nebraska fans would have been like, hey, we got it done. They gave up a field goal in the fourth quarter, but they didn't blow it out, that kind of thing. And now I just think the bar of expectation has been set so high again, after just, I think, knowing that there's just a good coaching staff in place that's putting taking the right steps, that when I watch this team rally around each other, even after an ugly win, I can see what it means to them. And I can see what it means to an offensive side of the ball that's literally trying to do whatever they can to score points, and I'm not saying that's an excuse for the interceptions and putting the balls on the ground, that kind of thing, but they're so supportive of one another. And you see how Coach Rhule reacts in the locker room afterwards. That was what was it, 17-9? Is that what it was? Yeah, 17-9 win. And I think everyone was like, what was that? And then you see the way the team's reacting, like they have to fight every tooth and nail for a win right now. So I think as disappointing sometimes it seems when you feel like, okay, on paper, this team, Nebraska, should be just going after it, but there's just so many struggles that they're going through right now, and for them to still come out on top, I think I have to take a step back and be like, a win is a win for this team right now, and it might be ugly, but like the heart, the grit, and the toughness is there, and there's the no quit. that I can appreciate and I can value. And I'm not in that locker room right now. I don't know what that's like. So I think I kind of was surprised a little bit after Illinois on the negative responses, not so much for Northwestern, but just watching what these wins means this team, I think kind of says what it is for me right now.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned on paper, I don't know if anybody should expect this team to light the world on fire,
Right.
even when this team was fully healthy.
Yeah.
Like, if we're being honest, this is not Michigan. This is not Ohio State.
Right.
This is not Penn State. They're trying to build to get there, and they have every intent to at some point. But no one should be expecting them to cover every single week and to be absolutely dominant. Where I'm most impressed with this team is just seeing the progress overall from last year's team to this year's team. And that starts with the turnover margin. Like, even if they put the ball on the ground, even if they give the ball to the other team via interception, what happens at the end of most games? They're either close to even or above average, right? That's where this team rests. That's why they win games. That's why they can win 17-9 instead of being on the losing end of that. So it just kind of all boils down to just taking a chill pill, right? Just being okay with the W, even if it looks ugly. We talk about ugly wins all the time. You have to win ugly before you can win pretty, right? Until you get there, be happy with where they are today and how they've battled through all this adversity. It goes back to preparedness, right? So Tony White said he's never been around a program that's had to move pieces around like this one, right? And being prepared just for anything that comes their way. And I think that also falls into the injury category of having young guys ready to go, ready to step up. But do you think that applies, how do I put this? I think that applies to more than just how difficult Nebraska is to prepare for, like from an opponent point of view, because there's so many moving pieces that even opponents out there are like, who are we going to get today?
I mean, on the defensive side, like there's so many guys that are in and out. And like we've talked this for week after week, like the level doesn't drop. You half the time don't even know who's out there. And so like on an offensive side, I can imagine what that's like. And also what I kind of meant too on the Northwestern game is like on paper, when you look at rushing defense and rush offense for Nebraska, it was like that is their bread and butter, and Northwestern has none of that. And then for Nebraska to take to the air game as much as they did, I mean, I'm assuming on Northwestern's end, they're like, well, I didn't expect that. I mean, and not that it necessarily executed. I mean, 17, I think we said dropbacks for Heinrich, and he completed 8 of them, the 144-yarder, whatever it was. But I don't think Northwestern out of the gate was like, yeah, they're going to toss it around the yard here today. So I don't know. I think like as Nebraska's trying to figure that out, I can imagine. But like, I think too, it's probably just more difficult. Probably an obvious statement here, but on the defensive end, just because they can shuffle so many guys in, and even if someone is out of position or someone goes down, we haven't really even seen that so far, the injury on that side. But like, there's so many guys that I just don't think the level drops it. And on the offensive side, I didn't even realize, because in the flow of the game, that Jenkins was at center at the end of the game. I didn't even know. And I mean, I probably should have, because I knew Ben Scott went out, but I was paying attention to all the other things on the offense. And I'm like, the fact that he went from a guard position to center, and I didn't even realize, like, talk about your preparedness level. Like, personally, like, you have to look at different kinds of film to be ready for that. Like, you're studying not only a guard position, like you're studying the whole O-line. I think that's something they've talked about previously too. Like, we're not just studying for one position, like we study as a group. Like, if I've got to throw you in there, like, you got to know the coverages, you got to know the package. So I think the detail oriented stuff like that, I can only imagine what that's like to learn, but to get ready, prepared against.
Yeah, I mean, and you talked about it on the defensive side of the ball a little bit, where they just have so many pieces, and it kind of, it's a little funny to me actually, because like you mentioned the injuries. There actually have been a couple injuries on the defense. We just don't notice.
We just don't know.
Right? Like Luke Reimer missed significant time.
Right.
Nick Henrich was not healthy to start the season. Deshaun Singleton's still not playing. And we just don't notice because everybody back there is awesome and it's all good. And then you throw in scout team guys in there that you've never heard of before. You have to literally look up on your roster who just made that sack because you have no idea who James Williams is.
KC kid.
And you're just
everybody but Avarie, apparently.
Yeah, she was like, "That's my guy. That's my guy." No, but you know, you've got this. There's this almost incredible confidence on the defensive side of the ball, because the fact is they don't need James Williams right now. They've got enough guys on the D line. They've got enough guys at those rush positions. They don't need James Williams right now, but they're like, hey, you know, we've got this guy who can play. We're going to get him on the field. And they know they're going to need guys like James Williams next year or the year after or whatever, right? And Coach White kind of talked about this is James Williams is the validation that like, hey, your hard work's going to pay off.
Yeah, like you will get a shot.
Yeah, like if you're good enough on scout team, you will get a shot. I think a lot of coaches talk about that, right? They're like, oh, hey, if you really ball out, no matter what your role is, yeah, they're just blowing smoke up your butt, right? Because they're like, you're never going to play. Some JUCO D lineman on scout team is never going to play no matter how good he is. And they're like, oh, no, James Williams is good. We're going to play him. Yeah. We're going to put him in a package. And then he balled out in the game like, hey, we're going to play you more.
Yeah, how cool was that? It wasn't even like we're going to put him. It was like we have a design package for him to get into the game.
They designed a package for a scout team guy.
Because of how hard he'd been playing in scout team and how much like he was causing havoc for their own offense. Yeah. I think it was interesting that I think Tony said it yesterday. He was like, we would not be the defense that we are if the offense isn't the offense that they are in practice. Like, I think there's a lot of frustrations for the fans right now seeing what the identity is, but like, because the offense is going as hard as they are and trying to get better every day and trying to figure out like what this offense is going to look like and being the run offense that we've seen at times, like the defense has been well prepared.
Yeah. And it's not, you know, I don't think people should hear that and say, hey, the offense is balling out in practice and stuff like that. But they're going hard. They're going full contact. They're going, you know, Coach Rhule talked about, hey, we've got the second hardest practice in America, according to the NFL scout. But, you know, it's the thing that we don't think about all the time. And this is really intuitive, but until somebody says it out loud, you don't necessarily think about it is, okay, if you don't want guys to be better at tackling, you have to tackle in practice, but somebody has to get tackled, right? Like that's the offense. Those are, you're submitting yourself to a pounding in practice when you know you're going to have to do that during game week and maybe you're trying to get fresh or whatever, but you're doing it to help out your defense, right? Like, and that's not something that I'd ever really thought about before, even though it's, you know, it's obviously it's super, like somebody has to get tackled to work on tackling, right?
I think too, like a major kudos to this team, because when you have a side of the ball that performs this well, and then you have another side of the ball that's struggling so much, and then at the end of the day, they're both giving each other credit for making each other better. Like this team could be going like this right now. They entirely could. Like defense could be like, we're sick and tired of it. Like, please, like, can you help us out here? And instead it's like, hey, we know you guys are hurt. We know you're struggling. Like, this is an all for one situation. Like, we got you. And instead of we got you, it's like, no, actually, can you turn the ball over? We want to go back out there again. We want to shut them down. But I just think like the way that this team is rallied around each other as a whole, and not, I mean, you really could be divided on two ends. It could be defense has been doing their thing and offense, like, can you figure it out? And I think instead to see them come together and really even credit each other still at this portion of the season is kind of been impressive, actually, to me.
Yeah, a couple of things you guys just said there. One, creating the package for James. Are we at all shocked that this coaching staff did that? Like, are we like sitting here thinking like, I'm really shocked that they did that. Like this coaching staff,
maybe not this staff.
No, not
this
staff.
This staff.
I think it's unusual first.
It's totally unusual in the grand scheme of things.
Staff,
but for this staff, you guys said that, and I'm like,
yeah, that makes sense.
It kind of does make sense.
Honestly, it's the same thing when they go out and recruit somebody I've never heard of. That's like, no, he's really fast. We like his frame.
And you know what? I think that's where it all started.
Yeah,
I think our expectation for the staff started with, who is this guy, and why do you think he's going to be good playing Division I football in a Power 5?
You got like Charles and Turner and Jalen Lloyd, and like none of these guys had big time offers, and they're just like, yeah, no, we like them.
And you know, in year one, it's easy to say like, you know what, I'm gonna trust you. I'm gonna trust that that's the right move. And you know what, 3 years, 2 years, whatever down the road, if it's not the right move, we'll know it, and you guys will hear it. But that's the kind of the state of mind that everybody's in right now, from fans to media, just the college football world. It's like, okay, well, Nebraska has a winning record. They're 4-3. They're on pace to get somewhere where they haven't been in a long time. Maybe they actually do know more than people gave them credit for early on in the season. Because when you do go after guys with no stars, you're driving past a high school in Colorado and you just happen to stop because some coach said, hey, you should look at this guy. He had no other offers anywhere else, and then he ends up with one to Nebraska at the end of that day. Like, that's just because the staff sees things that other people don't. So that's why I'm just not overly surprised when, you know, things kind of evolve throughout the season. Like when things just kind of hit us and we're just like, this staff will know what to do.
Well, it kind of goes back to that confidence thing, right? Because I think other coaching staffs do see those things, but they don't have the confidence.
Only Nebraska.
I don't think they have, a lot of staffs don't have the confidence to go out there and say, hey, I'm putting myself out there. Maybe they'll see a guy and they're like, oh, I kind of like him. And then they look him up and they're like, oh, he doesn't have any other offers. He doesn't have any stars. Nobody's talking about this guy. like they trust their eyes more than any coaching staff I've seen for a really long time. And I know Husker fans hate when I do this. It reminds me of when the Creighton staff would offer a guy like Kyrie Thomas that
I hate when you do
not a lot of guys saw coming out of high school, or they offer a guy like Justin Patton before anybody cared about who Justin Patton was, because they trusted their eyes, they trusted their evaluations. Nebraska's coaching staff is so good at that, and they're so confident in their ability to develop that they're okay taking swings on a guy that other schools, I legitimately think they probably see the same things and just don't have the confidence in their own either development or in their own eyes to say, yeah, we're going to take this guy.
I just don't think you can undervalue what a full belief from a coaching staff in an individual player does for a team and a player in general. Like every single kid is the star at their high school if they're going to go play college football at some point, right? Like you are the star. And then you get to college and it's like, and you see the kids, they either quit, they don't love it anymore, they're not committed to it anymore. And it's because they're probably, if it's not self-inflicted and it's not, a lack of hard work and that kind of stuff, they're not getting the same belief that they've gotten basically, I would say, for probably most of their career. Yeah. And you look at, and that's really hard because you go from being a star and you can be self-motivated and stuff like that. But if your coach is not willing to give you the same exact treatment as he's giving the next guy and you're working just as hard, that's really hard to go to practice every single day and know that I still have a fair shot. I'm going to make an impact on this team. When you look at the guy next to me, he's making more mistakes, but because maybe whatever relationship you guys have, I'm not going to get a shot. So I think for the guys that are on this team that have been there before this coaching staff, I said this, I think a few weeks ago on the radio show, like the relationship that Coach Rhule and Luke Reimer has is like fascinating to me because Luke Reimer has always been a name that this fan base has appreciated. He's always put in good work for this team. But this year he's become the voice, Coach Rhule says. He's become the reason Coach Rhule originally fell in love with this place, as he said. He's like, you don't understand what he's done for me to get to know what this place is like and enjoy coaching here. Like the player, like Tommy Hill, he was like, it just took Coach Cooper to be like, hey, you're good, but do you know how good you can be? I'm gonna put some belief in you and you show me, and I got you. And I think for a coaching staff to do that, play from what it sounds like, I could be completely wrong, right? But from what it looks like, and the guys that are stepping up that have been on this roster before and then have a little bit of belief, and someone's like, we think you're good. We don't think you're a waste of space, and we don't think you're a waste of a scholarship. You're be impactful. And I think that belief goes a long way to see the guys that were just stepping on the field a few times to being the dudes on this team. That's not oh, we found this random talent. It was already there. It just had to kind of be ignited again.
Do you guys remember Big Ten Media Days and the 3 players that went with Coach Rhule to Big Ten Media Days? It was Ethan Piper, it was Quentin Newsome, and it was Luke Reimer, right?
Yeah, and we were all like, okay.
Well, no, a lot of people were like, Luke Reimer, right? That was the one. Ethan Piper was understood.
Yes, for sure.
Quentin Newsome went last year, right?
Yes,
so it was
but it was no quarterback.
No quarterback.
Well, Jeff Sims, I guess, was there for one of them. But it wasn't a running back. It wasn't whatever.
Was it Jeff? It was Jeff Sims and Piper. I'm sorry. Did I say Newsome?
Newsome.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Scratch that. We'll reverb. We're going back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sims makes sense, right?
Sims makes sense. Piper makes sense. And then everyone was like Luke Reimer. And I remember watching Luke in spring practice. And I was watching him work with Dvorak, and he was just with his group of guys, right? MJ Sherman was there in that same pod. It wasn't all linebackers, but it was just Luke Reimer and Dvorak were side by side. Luke would run a play, run a drill. It would be 120%. That's how he would move, and then he would sprint back in line. And he would talk to somebody, talk about a rep, talk about something different. It was with
so much
fresh, Maverick Noonan was with that group. He would talk to Maverick Noonan. Then he would do his rep again, 130%. Right. So not only is he working by example, leading by example in that moment of saying hey, no matter what, if this is practice, if this is a game, we are going full speed. We're running through this brick wall. But he's also coming back around and he's teaching. And that's what embodies a leader. And that's what Coach Rhule really, I think, took a liking to early on, because then Dvorak would lean on Reimer to get information across to certain players. And I was just kind of watching this beautiful carousel, just go in this one little pod. And then I'd go over to Evan Cooper's drill and he's just screaming away, yelling at people. But I love Evan Cooper.
Different communication style.
Different type of communication style.
No, but Coop's great.
But that also goes back to what you were saying about Luke Reimer and Rhule's affinity for him.
Well, it's you saw a very similar thing. We talked about this a little bit earlier with Ethan Piper. Piper, another guy that was at media days, right? Is okay, this guy's out injured for the season. He's already talking about, okay, this is going to be really good for Justin Evans Jenkins. And this is, this is long-term. This is going to be better for his development. And I think maybe we didn't appreciate how close Justin Evans Jenkins was to getting on the field anyway. There were talk about how, I think there was legitimate questions in camp if he was going to beat out Ben Scott for that center spot. I mean, they really, really liked him. And obviously they didn't want to get him onto the field this way. But the fact that he's now in a position to play, I have the least amount of concerns for him out of anybody that's filling in right now, because Prohaska, I just don't know what he looks like now, like in terms of his health, his mental state, his just his size. Like he's so big now. Yeah. He was not, he's grown another 2 inches since coming in. And even since playing his freshman year, where you're just like, I don't know if this guy can move the way he needs to. You've got Henry Lutovsky, who's been in the program for a couple years, but hasn't made a ton of noise. Out of those three guys, Justin Evans Jenkins is the guy I have the least amount of questions about, and he's the guy we've seen the least of, right? He's been on the field the least. He's a true freshman. You just look at that guy and you go, yeah, no, I feel okay about that.
I'm good.
And like you said, he goes from guard to center, and we're just like, yeah, no, this is fine. Yeah. Like, how many times do you see a backup center in there and you've got snap issues, you've got exchange issues, you've got all sorts of issues because of how important the center is there. And he just
see it all the time.
Not only does he go from, okay, I'm all of a sudden playing guard, and then he's like, oh no, now I'm going to play maybe the most critical position on the offensive line with probably hardly any reps going into that week.
You know what kind of doesn't surprise me, however, though, is Coach Rhule told us after, I think, the first or second practice of fall camp, he said the speed and the talent on which we have on this freshman group is kind of ridiculous. He's like, the speed is what stands out. He goes, I've told them the only difference that gets you on the field. He's like, we're going to play our older guys. He's like, they want this. And he's like, they're going to lead us. Our freshmen will help us get there. He's like, the only difference why freshmen get on the field or why they don't is if how much they study film. If they put the phone down, if they stay here longer and they study film and they know the playbook, you will get on the field. So I'm not surprised that if he can go for multiple positions, that's one, it's telling me that he's proved to the coaching staff, I've watched film, I know what I'm doing. And that's probably why he's on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good stuff there. Coming up, we're going to lighten things up a little bit, start playing a little game here with Avarie. It's our Wednesday game. Guess who?
Giving away some UNO hockey tickets.
Yeah, so call in 888-638-4876 if you want to win UNO hockey tickets right here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We got a new view here on the stream yard. Yep. Here we go. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio. Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers, Avarie Howard here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. It's time to play a little game. We're going with Guess Who, but Andrew, as he does, our game master himself, likes puts a little twist on it. Our very own resident Bob Barker Jr. here. Take it away.
Oh, I prefer Pat Sajak, but it's cool.
How dare you?
So Guess Who? So last week we played this game, and the listener had to guess or had to ask as many questions in 60 seconds to try to get to the answer.
Did?
Yeah, the listener.
Last week. Yeah.
That was last week. This week's a little bit different because Avarie's in the chair. We chose to go a different route and all come up with one athlete, one celebrity, okay? And we are all going to play against one another. So it's going to be Avarie and myself and Shane when we're trying to guess Ravi's individual. Same thing if it's mine, it's Ravi, it's Avarie, it's Shane, and so forth. But the kicker here is we have Trent on line one. Trent, good morning.
Good morning. How are we doing?
Good. So, Trent, here's the idea of today's game. I know you probably called back wanting some redemption, but your way to win UNO hockey tickets could be a lot easier this time around because you will be playing with two people. Two people will be playing for you against one other. So you would get to choose. If I'm given the clue, you have your choice between Ravi, Avarie, and Shane. You get to choose two of them to team up and try to come up with the answer over that last person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, Ravi, you're going to go first, though, with your individual. So, Trent, you choose Avarie, myself, Shane. Who are the two people you want on your team?
All right, I'll take Andrew and Avarie.
Smart man. Smart man. Shane, you're on your own. So, Shane, you actually control if Trent gets these tickets or not.
Uh-oh.
That was probably not a good call there.
All right.
Not a bad one.
I have
Okay.
I have my person in mind.
Ladies first.
Let's go.
Is it a male?
It is.
So and then you would give a guess. So after you ask every
I gotta
question,
guess
you'll
literally
give
every
a guess.
male under the sun.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Get it right. That'd be
LeBron
nice.
James.
It is not LeBron James.
NBA was on the front of my.
Is it an athlete?
Sort of.
Oh, great.
Mike Ditka.
No, it is not Mike Ditka. Shane.
Is it a coach?
It is not.
That wouldn't be Mike Ditka.
You got to make a guess, Shano.
Sort of an athlete. I'm gonna go with Larry Bird.
How you doing Larry dirty like that? Called him sort of an athlete.
Because he's not. He doesn't play anymore. So he was an athlete.
No, okay. No, it is not.
I think
Larry
you
Bird.
thought too much into that
Yeah,
one.
not Larry Bird. Avery, go ahead.
So it's not a retired athlete? Is that what you're saying? Or?
No. That's not even a prompt yet. You can't even answer.
Sort of. They are
Okay.
sort of an athlete.
Okay.
But how are you sort of an athlete? I guess I'll know when it pops up there.
Is he bald?
Yes.
Is it The Rock?
It is The Rock.
What?
Bam.
How did you do that?
You are welcome. Let's go Mavs, baby.
Trent, you won.
How'd you go from sort of an athlete?
Because when he said
to
sort
Dwayne
of an
"The Rock"
athlete, that's
Johnson?
kind of who I think of. Not gonna lie, like I think of him as this athlete, but actually more of an actor. But then he like puts on this like used to be an athlete persona.
Yeah, well, okay, so he played at the University of Miami, right?
But I don't think of him as that.
I don't either, and that's why I he's not famous for being a football player.
If
But
you would have said yes, I would have never gone to The Rock.
But if you go like wrestling is, professional wrestling, I get they're athletic, but I don't know that everybody's like, hey, that's a sports star,
Wow,
you know?
I'm like super impressed.
That was incredible.
Trent, congratulations. Avery just won you the tickets.
Hang on the line.
Hang on the line.
and-
Shane will get your information. Sound good, man?
Yeah, sounds like a plan. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Trent.
I'm super
How about
impressed.
that?
Yeah.
I was too. Okay, well, Avery, since you just dominated, you don't get to play anymore. You have to now
You have to
choose
come
your
up with your
celebrity.
person.
I have my person.
Okay, and we'll run through this again. Right now, Avery's got bragging rights. She's up 1-0 on everybody else. Won Trent some tickets. If you still want to call in, there's still that ability. 888-638-4876.
That's correct. Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline.
That is correct. Ravi, kick this thing off. Go ahead. Your first question to Avery.
Okay. Is it an athlete?
Nope.
Meryl Streep.
Negative.
That was so quick. Is it an athlete? No. Meryl Streep.
I don't know why I even thought of that.
Is it a singer?
No.
Jennifer Aniston.
Mm-mm.
Shane?
So you had
No athlete.
No singer.
No singer.
And not Meryl Streep.
Or Jennifer Aniston. Very similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you say the same person twice, you have to do push-ups.
is she a politician?
No,
Oh.
it's not my world.
Shane, guess.
Kathy Lee.
Who is Kathy Lee? What movies are you watching?
It's a talk show.
I have no idea who that is. So no.
He used to be, like with Regis Philbin. It was Regis Philbin's co-host in the morning.
Yeah, no.
Oh, we didn't have, is it a male?
Yes.
Okay.
We went with three ladies.
Yeah.
And it's a male the whole time.
I thought one of you was going to ask it. I was just riding with my male. So it is a male, non-athlete, non-singer, non-politician. So I'm going to think actor here. Let's go with Bradley Cooper. Okay.
Does he only date people under the age of 25?
No, it is not Leonardo DiCaprio.
There's my question.
That's not your guess, though. So there you go.
Yeah, no.
Kevin Hart.
No.
Shane, what's your question?
So what is it again? Just run through it real quick.
Not an athlete,
Okay.
not a singer, not a politician.
Male.
Male.
And doesn't
And
only
not
date
Leonardo
people.
DiCaprio.
Yeah, it is not a Leonardo DiCaprio. Uh-huh.
Are they on the radio
Um,
frequently?
I would assume no.
So that's not what they're famous for.
No.
Okay.
No. If they were, sure they probably do guest appearances and stuff, but no.
So a male, not an athlete, not an actor, not a politician, and they're not frequently on the radio.
Yeah, like they're not like a radio host or anything like
That's
that.
not like Howard Stern,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Dickie V.
No, love Dickie V.
That's an interesting. That's a good one. Is it an actor?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure. We were guessing a lot of actors.
Right.
Want to nail that down. All right. So male actor.
It's really all you need. You don't need to go through the rest of them now.
I'm not going to. Denzel Washington.
No.
Ooh, good. Actor. Is he above the age of 50?
Sure is.
Ooh, okay. That's a good question. Age is a good question there.
Above the age of 50. Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No.
Good one.
Is he a comedy actor?
No. I would say most of his movies are not comedy.
Not primarily.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kurt Russell.
No.
Going with Miracle, trying to get some.
Yeah, why not?
Are they over the age of 70?
No.
Okay, so we're between 50 and 70. All right. Brad Pitt.
No.
Okay.
Good guess.
I'm glad I got a good one. Okay. Woohoo.
You do have a good one. This one's tough.
I was like, shoot, this one might be
She's
easy.
too
Okay.
smart for this show. Is he married?
Not anymore.
Ooh.
Been married twice. I'll put it that way.
Ooh.
That
I think I know it.
Doesn't help me.
I think I know it.
Okay.
George Clooney.
No.
That didn't help me.
I think he's only been married once. George Clooney. Clooney.
I was like,
No, not the person that you're talking about.
Is he an action star?
An action star?
Ooh,
Yeah.
good
So is he like in police movies or that sort of stuff? Adventure movies.
Yeah, more. Yeah.
Is it Bruce Willis?
No.
Okay. Is he in franchise movies, like multiples of a same?
You know what? Let me. My. No.
We may have to push this over to the next segment.
We're gonna keep going.
Were you thinking RDJ?
No, I was thinking Tom Cruise.
No.
Shoot.
Oh, then yeah, I see what you're saying. No.
All right, I'm taking my breather here.
All right, we need to regroup. Avery's beating us up right now. Got to regroup, come together. We'll figure this thing out. Coming up next, we will see if anyone can guess Avery's
I am so bad
celebrity.
at actors.
We'll give away more stuff.
You know what's funny is I don't really know any famous actors really either. This is just one of my favorites.
Just the one person.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got more of Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next as we wrap up the show.
We will be back.
We are wrapping up the show here on a Wednesday, and Avery is thoroughly kicking our butts in our own game, which is always a little awkward with the guest here, but that's okay. So earlier,
Thank goodness she's not much of like a real guest. She works with us.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Like it's not that embarrassing. Right?
Earlier,
Maybe.
Well, it's not embarrassing for me because I never go to the office, so it's fine. But the earlier Trent won tickets because Avery correctly guessed that I was thinking of The Rock. So far, Avery has stumped all of us with her guess. Here's what we know so far. It's a male actor between the ages of 50 and 70 that has been married twice or is maybe currently on their second marriage. We don't know if they
No.
Married and divorced twice.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a little nugget she just gave us for free there. Not primarily a comedy star and sort of in action movies.
Yeah.
But not really in franchises.
No.
That's where we're at, and I believe it is Andrew Rogers' turn to try and
you still call in.
So
we still
it can't
have 2
be.
tickets to
It
give
can't
away.
be Ben.
All right,
He's in the Justice League franchise.
We don't count those because those are trash.
Okay. Is this male actor African American?
No.
Okay.
Okay, here I'll give you a hint.
No. It's
Well, he said franchise movies, not franchise movies, but he's in movies and also TV shows, and the TV show is a series as well. So you have that at least.
Oh.
Not franchise in movies, but there's been a repeating season. I can give you that
not
much.
Primarily movies, but also in TV.
I wouldn't say not
Primarily movies, but also
yes.
television.
And that one's repeated if you want to consider that a franchise.
Matthew Perry.
Mm-mm.
Shane?
I don't know if he's been married twice. Again, I don't know people's like marital status.
Right. That doesn't really help you guys much, but I think you guys asked.
So you said he wasn't a comedy actor?
No.
Like comedy actor as in movies or in TV?
Both.
Both.
Mm-hmm.
So no Charlie Sheen.
I feel like you guys are gonna like find and be like, oh,
we're gonna kick ourselves.
Maybe, maybe not. I would hope so.
I wanted to. Okay, I'm just gonna guess somebody here, and I don't think he's in TV shows, but I wanted to say Matt Damon. Is it Matt Damon?
No.
Okay.
All right. So you said he's from your favorite movie.
Sure is.
Is your favorite movie a sports movie?
Nope.
Okay.
But he is in a lot of sports movies. A lot that I know you guys have both seen.
Ooh.
What?
Kevin Costner.
Bang.
Nailed it. Let's go.
I even mentioned Field of Dreams yesterday.
Is that what made you think of it?
No, my favorite movie is Dances with Wolves.
Oh, okay.
You said you would watch Moneyball every day.
Yeah.
And you could quote whatever it is, Get Smart.
Mm-hmm.
Dances with Wolves is my movie.
Okay.
Wow. There you go.
The full
Ravi
3
gets a
hours. I don't know.
Unbelievable.
Kevin Costner.
But he's in Yellowstone.
Yep.
That was kind of my thing there.
Okay. You guys don't
Front
get
of
it.
mind.
I'm not giving you guys it as easy as Avery gave it to us. She gave us like some unfair hints there. We could have been here for hours trying to get to Kevin Costner.
Oof. Yeah, we really could have. That was rough.
Some people said Yellowstone on here, and I was looking at the comments, and I was curious if you guys saw.
I wasn't.
I don't pay
at
attention to the comments, especially for games, because I don't want people to give me like the answer.
Okay.
Especially if you were like, "Oh, somebody in the comments got it right," and I'm like, "Oh, great! I saw 4 names." Okay, we'll do.
I do like Two Socks. Yeah.
We'll do
Shout out.
one more.
Great movie. Shumani Tutanka.
My turn. So, Shane, I'll let you kick this thing off. Ravi and Avery each have a point. You can either steal a point here and tie them. I already lost. I already have a fat goose egg in my column. Or it's a battle between the two to my right, Ravi and Avery.
Let's go.
To win, guess who today? Let's play. Shane, go ahead.
Is it a male?
It is.
Is it
going through the males?
Shane, just name any male.
Is it Napoleon Dynamite?
It is. It's not Napoleon Dynamite. No.
For some reason, I wouldn't be surprised if Andrew's like, yes, it is.
Nailed it.
Unbelievable. He got it right.
Is it an athlete?
It is an athlete.
Okay. Is it Brock Purdy?
No.
Is it a current athlete?
No.
Is it Matt Holliday?
No, but we did get done talking about him today.
Go ahead, Shane.
What was the
retired male athlete?
Retired male athlete.
Is give him the Spark Notes version?
Is it an NFL?
No.
Athlete? Okay, so retired male athlete, not NFL. Is it Derek Jeter?
No.
Is he a retired baseball player?
He is.
Hank Aaron?
No.
Did he play for the Cardinals?
No.
Oh.
David Ortiz?
Nope.
Did he play in the National League?
He did.
Is it Sammy Sosa?
No.
Was he a pitcher?
He was.
Oh.
Good question.
No, I can't even think. Zach Greinke.
No.
Recently retired. Great Zach Greinke.
Great.
Is he a Hall of Famer?
Yes.
Okay. Retired pitcher, Hall of Famer, Nolan Ryan.
No.
Okay.
Did he win the Cy?
Yes.
Oh God, I don't know. I wanted.
Who's calling it?
I wanted.
Can they guess?
I wanted to choose Nolan Ryan.
Are you able to look up on this thing?
No, I can't see who's calling.
Oh no.
Oh, Shane has to answer, and then we'll be
Yeah.
able to see.
No, I was saying, are you able to look things up? You guys looking? Are you able to look things up?
I don't.
No, I'm not looking things up. I'm just checking on our Twitter.
I looked up if people were married after I guessed.
Yeah,
but that's about it.
All right, so you take
Shane's turn here.
Okay.
Cy Young, Hall of Famer, retired pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
Did he play for the? I'm trying to think of who. The Braves.
No,
that's not even the NS.
Yeah, that's NL.
Okay,
NL.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That didn't help me one bit.
You're thinking like Greg Maddux or
I can't even think of people right now. I
might just have to look up NL Cy Young winner so I have guesses.
That's what I feel like it's such a thin column.
I mean,
right now.
I wouldn't even focus that much on Cy Young. I would focus on like asking more general questions to try to narrow down to certain either a team or him or things like that.
Ooh, I've got a question. I can do. Okay.
I literally have no guess outside of that. I just helped you that he's not on the Braves.
Okay. Did they win a World Series?
They did.
Okay.
Let's see here. Hall of Famer, World Series. Roy Halladay.
No.
Ooh. I felt good about
Shane,
that.
back to you. Unless you want to pass on your turn.
Yeah, this is unfair because I have no idea where you guys. Is he a New York Yankee?
He was.
Okay. And did he do saves? Can I ask you?
You can't. It's two questions.
It's probably that guy, but I can't think of his name, so I'm going to pass, and I'll let the next person.
It is not Mariano Rivera.
Dang it.
Because he played in the NL also, right? You said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so he's played in both leagues, but I wasn't going to give anybody that added bonus.
Okay. Ooh, I've got to guess.
Has
the Yankees too?
Has he been retired over 10 years?
Holy moly. When was his last game? Hang tight. Yes.
More than 10 years. Okay.
Roger Clemens.
No.
Did he play for the Diamondbacks?
He did.
Randy Johnson.
It is Randy
Let's
Johnson.
go.
Guys, the Diamondbacks won yesterday. Come on.
There we go.
Well,
No, they're the Diamondbacks.
Real quick here. So Ravi's your winner. Love it. Love to see it.
Nice work.
Although Avery had the most impressive guess because she got it real quick.
Out of what the heck?
Like it was what? It was like the third turn, right?
Maybe
that was because she asked, you asked.
She
so
started.
So
she started with an easy question of, is it a male?
Yeah.
So it was just, I say easy question, like one that didn't give you
didn't
anything.
help a ton. Although it did narrow down it to half the population, which is helpful. So that was, Avery had the best guess, but
I was hoping somebody was going to ask, did he kill a bird? I was going to say, yeah.
Technically winning.
I don't know. When I said New York Yankees, it seemed like it narrowed it down a lot.
It did. Actually, that did help because I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's just saying.
Mm-hmm. And you helped too because I was down to Randy Johnson or Roger Clemens at that point. So that was
welcome.
Good.
Half point.
Real quick before we wrap up the show here, let's get to Jamie real quick on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline. What's up, Jamie? Go ahead, Jamie.
Hey, guys. Appreciate the show, and I really appreciate that last Friday segment about the translations. I helped Andrew out, and I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, Jamie, thank you so much for that, because I would have been in a world of hurt if I was trying to do that on my own. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, my high school Spanish teachers would not have been impressed with me, but we do appreciate your help, Jamie.
Yeah, maybe next Friday you guys could try translating, see what happens.
No thanks.
It's not going to go well.
I get made fun of already enough.
Just wanted to ask you guys quick about the injuries. I know in the preseason they changed that practice field from that field turf to grass, but most of the injuries, it seems like, have actually happened on the field turf. So it seems like an odd year and a very high number. I'm not a doctor, but do you guys think it has anything to do with that? Thanks, guys.
Appreciate
Jamie, appreciate it.
I guess for me, like, they switched the fields. It could be hard to like get used to one thing and then play on another. Like that's something I thought about a little bit when they first put it in.
Coach Rhule said one of the things is like they focus so much on non-contact injuries in the offseason, and almost all of them have been contact. So
that's what
may just kind of be unfortunately the nature of it. But
yeah, with contact injuries, those are harder to protect against, and they're a little bit flukier. So I don't think it's surface related with contact injuries, but it is a fair question whenever they change playing surfaces like that. And obviously that's been a big deal in the NFL as well. Avery, we appreciate you coming and hanging out, and
hey, thanks for kicking our
butts in
whatever.
in the Guess Who game. We'll see you again next week. More of Hurrdat Sports Radio tomorrow on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln.